The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, the Jedi and Sith believed nothing could exist beyond its reach. No power, no consciousness, no warrior. They were wrong. On the forgotten industrial wasteland of Raxus Prime, where mountains of scrap metal reached toward twin suns, and the Empire strip mined what remained of value, something fell from the stars that would shatter their certainty. No hyperspace signature announced its arrival. No Imperial sensors detected its approach until impact. A spherical pod, scorched black and trailing plasma, tore through the atmosphere at impossible speeds, reducing two Imperial patrol shuttles to molten debris before cratering into a canyon of rusted starship hulls. The explosion registered on seismic monitors across 3 continents. Within the wreckage, something stirred, something with power that made the very air tremble, yet carried not a single trace of the Force. Commander Voss stood at the edge of the crater, his white armor gleaming against the rust-red landscape, and felt his blood turn cold. The pod's hull was unlike anything in Imperial databases, organic curves fused with crystalline technology, still glowing with residual heat that warped the air. His squad of 20 stormtroopers formed a perimeter, weapons trained on the sealed hatch. But Voss had survived the Clone Wars. He'd learned to trust his instincts. Every instinct screamed that whatever emerged from that pod would change everything. "Scanners are going haywire, sir," his tech specialist reported, voice crackling through the helmet comm. "Energy readings are off the scale, but it's not matching any known power signature. Not fusion, not hyperspace residue, not even the Force, sir." The hatch exploded outward with a concussive blast that sent 3 troopers flying. Voss barely raised his arm in time to shield his face from the shrapnel. Through the dissipating smoke, a figure emerged, humanoid, but radiating menace like a fusion reactor barely contained. He was shorter than Voss expected, perhaps 5.5 feet tall, but built like a statue carved from durasteel and contempt. His armor was alien, blue and white, form-fitting yet clearly battle-worn, with a crimson cape that somehow remained pristine despite the crash. But it was his face that froze Voss in place. Sharp features locked in a permanent scowl, dark eyes that held nothing but disdain, and hair that defied gravity itself, standing in a widow's peak of pure black flame. Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, surveyed his surroundings with barely contained fury. His gravity chamber training session had been interrupted by equipment failure, and the resulting explosion had torn him from his universe and dumped him in this junkyard populated by weaklings in white armor. His ki felt sluggish, as if the very fabric of this reality resisted his power. It would take time to adapt, but he was still leagues beyond anything this pathetic world could offer. "Identify yourself," Voss commanded, raising his blaster. "By order of the Galactic Empire, you are—" "Silence," Vegeta said, his voice carrying absolute authority despite its measured tone. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The word cut through the air like a vibroblade through flesh. "Where am I? What pathetic corner of the universe is this?" Voss felt his training kick in. The being spoke basic, which meant it had either been here before or possessed translation technology. Neither option was reassuring. "You're on Raxus Prime, in the outer rim territories of the Galactic Empire. You will come with us for processing, or we will use force." Vegeta's lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it contained any warmth. "Force? You?" He took a single step forward, and the ground beneath his boot cracked like glass. "I am Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, elite warrior of Universe 7. I've destroyed planets for sport and conquered empires before breakfast. You dare threaten me with your primitive toys?" "Open fire!" Voss screamed. 20 blasters discharged simultaneously, a wall of crimson energy bolts that would have vaporized a rancor. Vegeta didn't dodge. He didn't even raise his hands. The bolts struck an invisible barrier inches from his body, his ki aura, held instinctively despite this universe's resistance, and dissipated like rain on a force field. The Saiyan prince looked down at his armor, checking for damage he knew wouldn't be there, then raised his gaze to the stormtroopers with something approaching genuine curiosity. "Interesting. Energy-based weapons, crude but effective against normal targets. He lifted one gloved hand, and Voss felt the air pressure spike. A small sphere of golden energy materialized in Vegeta's palm, crackling with power that made their blasters look like children's toys. Allow me to demonstrate real power. The Ki blast was barely a fraction of Vegeta's capability. A warning shot, nothing more. It struck the ground between the stormtroopers and exploded with the force of a proton torpedo, sending armored bodies flying like ragdolls. Voss hit the ground hard enough to crack his visor, his HUD flickering with damage warnings and casualty reports. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard screaming. Through the smoke, he saw the alien warrior standing untouched, completely unimpressed by the destruction he'd caused with casual effort. Vegeta stretched his neck, feeling the tension in muscles that had been compressed during dimensional transit. This galaxy was weak. These Empire fools were weak. Their technology was barely worth studying, but his pod was damaged. His key reserves were adapting to local conditions, and he needed information. Conquering this universe could wait until he understood its hierarchies and located its strongest warriors. Even a prince needed intelligence before claiming his throne. You, he said, pointing at the commander struggling to his feet. You will tell me everything about this galactic empire. Who rules it? What warriors does it command? And most importantly, Vegeta's eyes narrowed dangerously. How do I get off this scrap heap and find a proper challenge? Commander Voss, despite his training, despite his years of service, despite having faced rebel commandos and worse, did the only sensible thing. He activated his emergency beacon and prayed to whatever gods might listen that reinforcements arrived before this monster decided talking was finished. Above them in the crimson-tinged sky, Imperial Star Destroyers were already altering course. Reports were flooding Imperial channels about an unprecedented threat on Raxus Prime. In his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Darth Vader felt a disturbance. Not in the Force, but in its absence. Something powerful had arrived that existed outside the cosmic balance he'd spent decades mastering. The Sith Lord stood, his breathing mask hissing in the darkness. Whatever this anomaly was, it would kneel before the Empire or be destroyed. There was no third option. Vader had never encountered a being that could resist the Force's inexorable pull. He was about to learn that the universe was far larger than the Force could touch. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. 3 Imperial Star Destroyers hung in orbit above Raxus Prime like predatory birds circling carrion. Captain Nevik of the ISD Intimidator studied the tactical display with growing unease. 37 stormtroopers dead, 12 ATST walkers reduced to molten scrap. An entire garrison base vaporized by what survivors described as golden light from his hands. The alien hadn't used weapons. He hadn't used technology. He'd simply destroyed them with raw energy that sensors couldn't classify. Sir, we've established a perimeter around the target zone, his tactical officer reported. Atmospheric bombardment is ready on your command. Nevik almost gave the order. Almost. But Grand Moff Tarkin's instructions had been explicit. Capture the being alive if possible, eliminate only as last resort. The Empire didn't waste potential assets, and something that could shrug off blaster fire while generating planet-cracking energy signatures qualified as the rarest asset of all, a weapon that might surpass even Lord Vader. In the junk canyons below, Vegeta had appropriated an Imperial speeder bike and was currently racing across the wasteland at speeds that should have torn the vehicle apart. He'd interrogated Commander Voss thoroughly. The man had proven surprisingly informative once Vegeta demonstrated what happened to those who wasted his time, and the information troubled him more than he'd admit. This galactic empire controlled millions of worlds. Their leader, Emperor Palpatine, commanded fleets of massive warships and armies numbering in the billions. They'd destroyed an entire planet called Alderaan as a demonstration of power. The description reminded Vegeta uncomfortably of Frieza's empire, and that comparison ignited something dangerous in his chest. He'd spent years under Frieza's boot, forced to serve a tyrant who destroyed his homeworld and slaughtered his race. He would never serve another such master. But he needed their technology. His scouter was useless here. It couldn't detect these force readings that apparently measured power in this universe. His pod required materials he didn't recognize. And most frustrating of all, his key felt like it was fighting through thick mud every time he tried to access his full power. Whatever universal laws govern this reality, they weren't friendly to Saiyan physiology. The speeder bike crested a ridge, and Vegeta brought it to a halt. Below him sprawled what the commander had called a salvage operation, massive droids and enslaved workers tearing apart ancient starship wrecks under the watchful guns of Imperial overseers. The sight triggered memories of Frieza's conquests, of civilizations strip-mined and populations enslaved. His fist clenched on the handlebar hard enough to crumple the metal. "Attention, unidentified being." The voice boomed from atmospheric speakers, amplified across the canyon. "You are surrounded by the Galactic Empire's Third Fleet. Power down and surrender, or face orbital bombardment. You have 60 seconds to comply." Vegeta looked up at the sky where the massive triangular ships hovered like storm clouds. They were impressive by this galaxy's standards. Kilometers long, bristling with weapons, each one a mobile fortress. Against conventional opponents, they'd be unstoppable. Against a Super Saiyan who'd fought intergalactic tyrants, they were target practice. But his ki was still adjusting. A prolonged battle would drain him faster than normal, and he still needed information about this universe's power structure before making enemies of everyone. Strategy wasn't cowardice. It was what separated princes from common warriors. 30 seconds, the voice continued. Vegeta's scowl deepened. They thought numbers gave them authority. They thought their metal ships made them strong. They understood nothing about true power, but perhaps he could use their arrogance. Let them believe they'd captured him, learn their weaknesses. Then, when his strength fully returned, teach them the same lesson he'd taught Frieza's forces, that overwhelming numbers meant nothing to overwhelming power. The Saiyan prince raised his hands in what might generously be called surrender, though his posture radiated nothing but coiled violence. "I will speak with whoever commands these vessels, but know this, I submit to no one. I am agreeing to a temporary audience, nothing more." On the Intimidator's bridge, Captain Nevik allowed himself a small smile. The being's pride would be its downfall. They all broke eventually. "Deploy Detention Squad Theta. Use electronets and stun cannons. I want it alive and conscious." The dropships descended like metal birds of prey, disgorging squads of specialized stormtroopers equipped with anti-force user technology. They'd learned hard lessons hunting Jedi survivors. Electronets disrupted concentration, stun cannons overloaded nervous systems, and cortosis weave restraints nullified lightsabers. Against this lone alien, even one with unusual abilities, they were surely overkill. Vegeta watched them approach with analytical eyes. 30 soldiers in modified armor, weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill. Energy nets crackling with electricity. They'd clearly fought powerful opponents before and developed countermeasures. Clever in a primitive way. He'd let them capture him, observe their command structure, then escape when convenient. Simple. The first electronet struck his ki barrier and disintegrated instantly. The stun cannon blast splashed against his aura like water on stone. Vegeta sighed. Must everything in this universe be so tedious? He moved. To the stormtroopers, he simply vanished. One moment standing still, the next moving through their formation like a meteor through atmosphere. He didn't kill. He'd given his word to speak with their commanders. And even though they were beneath him, a Saiyan prince kept his word. But he rendered every soldier unconscious with precise strikes that shattered armor and cracked helmets. 30 warriors disabled in under 4 seconds. Captain Nevik stared at his tactical display in horror. The life signs hadn't gone dark, but every soldier was down. The alien hadn't even used those energy attacks. It had moved faster than targeting computers could track. "Bombardment authorized," he screamed. "All cannons, fire at will." Turbo laser fire lanced down from orbit, each bolt carrying enough power to vaporize a city block. The canyon erupted in a hellstorm of emerald destruction that turned sand to glass and metal to vapor. For 30 seconds, the Third Fleet poured enough firepower to slag a continent into a target zone barely a kilometer wide. When the bombardment ceased, the sensors showed a crater glowing white-hot with residual heat. Nothing could survive that. Nothing organic, nothing mechanical, nothing. Vegeta floated above the crater, arms crossed, not a scratch on his armor. His Kai aura blazed around him like golden flame, dissipating the smoke and heat. He'd let the first few bolts hit his barrier just to measure their power. Impressive compared to the hand weapons, but still barely enough to make him exert effort. This empire had quantity but lacked quality. "Is that your best?" His voice carried across the comm frequencies, somehow hijacking their secured channels. "I've survived attacks from beings who could destroy solar systems. Your light show barely qualifies as a warm-up." On the bridge, Nevik felt control slipping away. This wasn't a soldier or even a force user. This was something else entirely, something that laughed at the Empire's might. "Deploy the Inquisitor," he ordered quietly. "Contact Lord Vader immediately. Tell him we found something impossible." In the depths of the Intimidator, a robed figure stirred in meditation. The Eighth Brother had been hunting Jedi remnants in this sector when the alert came. He'd felt nothing in the Force, no disturbance, no presence, no warning, but the Empire's panic was palpable. A being that could ignore turbo-laser bombardment while generating energy signatures that defied analysis? It was either a miracle or a nightmare. The Inquisitor ignited his double-bladed lightsaber, the crimson blades spinning in an intimidating display. He would discover which. Vegeta sensed the new arrival before seeing it, a spike of focused energy different from the others. Not Kai, but something disciplined, refined. The first opponent in this universe who might actually warrant his attention? The Saiyan Prince descended to the canyon floor, his boots touching scorched glass with deliberate confidence. "Finally," he said, watching the robed figure approach through the smoke. "Someone who feels like they might be worth fighting." The Eighth Brother saw his target clearly now. Humanoid. Small in stature but radiating absolute confidence. No lightsaber. No visible weapons. Just fists and that insufferable arrogance. The Inquisitor had broken dozens of former Jedi who thought themselves untouchable. This creature would be no different. "You will surrender," the Eighth Brother declared, reaching out with the Force to crush the alien's windpipe. "Or you will die." Vegeta felt the invisible pressure around his throat, the same sensation he'd felt from that Ginyu Force psychic. Guldo. Telekinesis of some kind. Interesting. He flexed his neck muscles and the pressure shattered like glass. Is that this Force ability the commander mentioned? How disappointing. The Inquisitor's confidence cracked. His Force grip had failed. Impossible. He channeled more power, lifting boulders and hurling them with lethal velocity. The alien didn't dodge. The rocks shattered against his body like foam. The Eighth Brother ignited his lightsaber fully, the spinning blades humming their deadly song, and charged. Vegeta caught the lightsaber blade between two fingers. The Inquisitor stared in disbelief as his plasma blade, capable of cutting through blast doors, capable of melting durasteel, stopped cold against bare skin. The alien wasn't even straining. He looked bored. "Plasma containment field shaped by magnetic flux," Vegeta analyzed clinically. "Clever, elegant, completely useless against someone with proper ki control." He released the blade and backhanded the Inquisitor hard enough to send him crashing through a derelict starship hull. The Eighth Brother struggled to rise, his ribs broken, his confidence shattered. This being had nullified the Force, ignored a lightsaber, and swatted him aside like an insect. What manner of creature existed beyond the Force's reach, yet wielded such impossible power? Vegeta walked toward the fallen Inquisitor, his expression thoughtful rather than triumphant. "You're stronger than the others. Trained, disciplined. But you rely too heavily on this Force ability. Tell me, who taught you to fight? Who commands warriors like you?" "Lord Vader," the Eighth Brother gasped through broken teeth. "The Emperor's enforcer. He will destroy you." "Vader." Vegeta tested the name, finding it wanting. "Very well. Arrange a meeting. I wish to speak with whoever rules this empire. Consider it A royal audience between equals. The Inquisitor laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. You're not his equal. Lord Vader is the most powerful Force user alive. He's killed thousands. I don't care about your Force, Vegeta interrupted coldly. I care about real power. If this Vader is truly strong, we'll have much to discuss. If he's weak, I'll crush him and find someone worth my time. He turned away, leaving the Inquisitor alive. Barely. Inform your superiors. The Prince of all Saiyans requests an audience with their strongest warrior. They have one standard rotation to arrange it. After that, I start destroying their ships until someone interesting appears. Above, Captain Nevik watched the display and knew with crystal clarity that his career was over. The being had defeated an Inquisitor in seconds. It had walked through orbital bombardment, and now it was demanding an audience with Vader himself. The Empire had encountered something beyond its control. And for the first time in years of Imperial service, Nevik wondered if overwhelming force was enough. In deep space, millions of miles away, Darth Vader felt the disturbance intensify. Not the Force calling to him, but the absence of it. A void in the shape of a warrior, radiating power that made stars seem dim. The Dark Lord's mechanical breathing quickened slightly. Set course for Raxus Prime, he commanded. Maximum speed. This being would kneel before the Empire's might, or it would learn why Darth Vader was feared across the galaxy. The Force had shown him many paths to victory. It had never shown him defeat. Perhaps it was time the Force learned something new. The eighth brother's broken body was retrieved within the hour. Rushed to the Intimidator's medical bay, where Imperial physicians worked frantically to save the Inquisitor's life. His injuries told a story that terrified every officer who heard the report. Shattered ribcage from a single strike, internal bleeding consistent with impact trauma, exceeding speeder bike collision velocities, and psychological shock that left him muttering the same phrase repeatedly. He caught the blade. He caught it with his fingers. Captain Nevik stood in the communications chamber, his career already in ruins, and waited for the holographic transmission that would seal his fate. The blue-tinted projection materialized. Grand Moff Tarkin, his gaunt features carved from disapproval and cold calculation. Captain, your report strains credibility, Tarkin said without preamble. A single being withstands orbital bombardment, defeats an Inquisitor in hand-to-hand combat, and hijacks secured Imperial frequencies to demand an audience? I'm debating whether to court-martial you for incompetence or for filing a fraudulent report. Sir, I have full sensor logs, witness testimony from 37 surviving personnel, and the eighth brother himself confirms. I have reviewed your data, Tarkin interrupted, which is why Lord Vader is already en route to your position. The Emperor himself has taken interest in this anomaly. You will maintain containment until the Dark Lord arrives. If this being escapes or causes further damage, you will face consequences more severe than mere court-martial. Am I understood? Yes, Grand Moff. Nevik saluted as the hologram flickered out. Maintain containment. As if they'd contained anything. The alien had simply stopped attacking, apparently content to wait for this meeting it demanded. They weren't containing it. They were being tolerated. The distinction was crucial and utterly terrifying. On the surface, Vegeta had claimed an Imperial garrison outpost as his temporary headquarters. The stormtroopers stationed there had wisely retreated at his approach, leaving him with access to their communication equipment, their data terminals, and most importantly, their ration supplies. The food was bland, something called Nutribars that tasted like compressed cardboard. But his Saiyan metabolism demanded constant fuel, especially while adapting to this universe's physics. He'd spent the last several hours accessing their computer networks. Security protocols were laughably primitive compared to Capsule Corp technology. Within minutes, he'd compiled a comprehensive overview of this galactic empire. Founded 20 years ago from the ruins of something called the Republic, ruled by Emperor Palpatine, enforced through fear and overwhelming military superiority. They controlled roughly 70% of known space through star destroyers, stormtrooper legions, and targeted brutality. The parallels to Frieza's empire were unmistakable and infuriating. But it was the information about Lord Vader that captured Vegeta's attention, the Empire's supreme military commander. Palpatine's personal enforcer, a former Jedi Knight, whatever that meant, who'd turned to something called the dark side and become unstoppable. The record showed a pattern. Vader arrived, resistance crumbled, survivors were executed or worse. No defeats recorded, no retreats documented, just methodical, absolute victory after victory. A warrior of reputation, Vegeta mused, reviewing footage of Vader force choking subordinates for failure. The telekinetic ability again, but wielded with casual mastery that the Inquisitor had lacked. Finally, someone in this primitive galaxy who might provide entertainment? His scouter would have given precise power readings. Here he was operating blind, forced to rely on instinct and reputation. It galled him to admit it, but this force ability was proving more sophisticated than initial impressions suggested. The Inquisitor had been weak, yes, but the technique itself showed potential. If this Vader had mastered it to the degree records suggested, the coming confrontation might actually elevate his heart rate. A shadow fell across the wasteland outside. Vegeta looked up and felt his warrior's instincts sharpened to razor focus. A ship was descending, not one of the mass-produced Imperial shuttles, but something unique. Sleek, angular, black as the void between stars. The vessel radiated purpose and menace even before landing. As the boarding ramp lowered with hydraulic precision, Vegeta rose from the commander's chair he'd appropriated and walked outside to meet whatever emerged. Darth Vader descended the ramp with the inexorable certainty of a force of nature. His black armor reflected the twin sun's light, his cape billowed despite the still air, and his respirator's rhythmic breathing filled the silence like a death knell counting down to inevitable confrontation. Behind him, two squads of elite stormtroopers, these with crimson pauldrons marking them as Vader's personal death squadron, took flanking positions. The Dark Lord stopped 20 meters from Vegeta, and for a long moment, two warriors from different universes studied each other. Vader saw a small, arrogant being whose power existed outside the Force entirely. He'd felt it from orbit, a void where power should register, like staring at a star and seeing only darkness. Yet the void pulsed with energy that made his cybernetic sensors scream warnings. The being's aura, invisible to normal sight but blazing in Force perception, resembled nothing in his decades of experience. Not Jedi, not Sith, not even a Force-sensitive anomaly. Something entirely other. Vegeta saw a tall figure wrapped in machinery and darkness, exuding discipline and controlled violence. The aura was different from the Inquisitor, denser, more refined, carrying an edge of genuine lethality. This one had killed extensively and efficiently, a warrior who'd earned his reputation through blood rather than political appointment, respectable in its way. "You are the one who defeated my Inquisitor," Vader stated, his voice a mechanized baritone that brooked no disagreement. "You are the one who resisted Imperial might and demanded audience. I am Darth Vader, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Forces and Lord of the Sith. You will explain your presence in this galaxy, your nature and your intentions. Refuse and you will be destroyed." Vegeta's response was a cold smile. "I am Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, elite warrior of Universe 7, and servant to no one. I crashed on this industrial trash heap due to dimensional transit failure. My nature is beyond your comprehension. My intentions are my own." He crossed his arms, stance radiating defiant authority. "I agreed to this meeting because you're allegedly the strongest warrior this empire commands. Prove it, or stop wasting my time with threats you cannot enforce." The stormtroopers shifted nervously, weapons rising. No one spoke to Lord Vader with such disrespect. No one survived such insolence. Vader raised one hand, and the Force surged forth. Not the crude grip of the Eighth Brother, but the refined, crushing application of decades of dark-side mastery. He would compress this being's organs to paste, demonstrate the folly of arrogance, and extract answers from whatever remained. Vegeta felt the invisible pressure, vastly stronger than the Inquisitor's attempt. It wrapped around him like a tightening vice, seeking to crush his chest, to rupture his heart, to obliterate his lungs. Against a normal being, it would have been instantly fatal. Against a Saiyan who'd survived Frieza's death beams and Cell's full power, it was pressure, nothing more. His ki aura flared to life. Not the golden super Saiyan transformation, not yet, but the white gold baseline that marked a Saiyan warrior drawing upon their power. The force grip shattered like glass against stone. Vegeta didn't move, didn't flinch, simply stood there as the energy that should have killed him dissipated harmlessly. "Is that all?" he asked with genuine curiosity. Your subordinate attempted the same technique. I expected better from someone with your reputation. Vader's breathing remained steady, but internally his mind raced. The force grip had failed. Not weakened, failed entirely, as if the being was immune to telekinetic manipulation. Impossible. The force touched all things, bound all things. Yet this creature existed outside its dominion completely. Impressive, Vader admitted, lowering his hand. You resist the Force through means I have never encountered, but the Force offers many paths to victory. He extended his other hand, and blue-white lightning crackled from his fingertips. Sith lightning, channeled through his cybernetics, despite the agonizing pain it caused his own systems. The lightning struck Vegeta's ki barrier and was absorbed, dissipated through energy dispersion techniques he'd learned fighting androids. Electricity, even mystical electricity, followed predictable patterns. His barrier converted the energy to harmless heat that vented into the surrounding air. Energy attacks, Vegeta observed, unimpressed. Crude but effective against weaker opponents. Do you have anything else, or should I demonstrate what real power looks like? The stormtroopers were backing away now, understanding with primal certainty that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Lord Vader, unstoppable enforcer of Imperial will, was being toyed with by an alien barely taller than a protocol droid. Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming to life with a sound that had preceded the death of thousands. He was the greatest duelist in the galaxy, a Jedi prodigy turned Sith Lord, master of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. If the Force could not touch this being directly, perhaps 3 feet of plasma would suffice. He moved with the supernatural speed the dark side granted, crossing 20 meters in a blur, bringing his blade down in a gemso power strike that could cleave a durasteel door. Vegeta caught the lightsaber blade between his thumb and forefinger. The gesture was casual, almost contemptuous. The plasma blade, capable of cutting through nearly any material in the galaxy, stopped cold against bare skin, protected by focused Kai. Vegeta examined the weapon with clinical interest, feeling the heat, analyzing the magnetic containment field, respecting the engineering, if not the application. The Inquisitor wielded something similar, he said conversationally, still holding the blade. Yours is more refined. Better power regulation, tighter magnetic field. But the principle is identical. You shape plasma with magnetism and call it a weapon. He released the blade and flicked Vader's chest plate with one finger. A casual tap that sent the Dark Lord stumbling backward 3 steps. Against opponents who understand energy manipulation, it's just an expensive flashlight. Vader regained his stance, his tactical computer screaming alerts. The being had stopped his lightsaber, with fingers. The 8th brother's report had been accurate. Impossible, but accurate. This creature operated under physical laws that superseded the Force entirely. What are you? Vader demanded, genuinely curious now rather than merely threatening. I told you, a Saiyan, a warrior race from Universe 7. Vegeta's expression hardened. We were enslaved by a tyrant named Frieza, who conquered galaxies through fear and overwhelming force. Your empire uses identical methods. It disgusts me. You speak of disgust, yet you radiate power sufficient to conquer worlds yourself, Vader observed. Hypocrisy. There's a difference between conquest through strength and conquest through fear, Vegeta countered. I've destroyed civilizations, yes, but I fought their strongest warriors first, gave them a chance to prove themselves. Your empire destroys entire planets to make examples, murders billions who never had the opportunity to fight back. That's not conquest. That's cowardice hiding behind superior numbers. Vader tilted his head slightly, an unconscious gesture of reassessment. You judge the Empire's methods while standing atop corpses of stormtroopers you casually rendered unconscious. Your moral superiority is questionable. I didn't kill them, Vegeta shot back. I could have, easily. But I gave my word to speak with your commanders, and a Saiyan prince honors his commitments. Unlike your empire, which apparently arrests beings for the crime of crashing on their junkyard planets. The argument was absurd. Two warriors debating ethics while demonstrating casual ability to level cities. But Vader found himself engaged despite his certainty of Imperial supremacy. This Vegeta was arrogant beyond measure, but his arrogance was backed by demonstrable power. And his critique of Imperial methods, however unwelcome, wasn't entirely wrong. The Emperor maintains order through strength, Vader said. The galaxy requires firm control, or chaos consumes all. You claim to understand strength. You should appreciate the necessity. Strength and terror aren't synonymous, Vegeta replied. Frieza maintained his empire through fear. It made him and his forces weak, dependent on intimidation rather than actual power. When I finally surpassed him, his entire operation collapsed because no one feared him anymore. Your empire operates identically. One day someone will surpass your emperor, and this entire structure will crumble. That day will not come, Vader stated with absolute conviction. The Emperor is the most powerful Force user in history. No one can challenge his supremacy. Vegeta's smile was sharp as a vibroblade. Tell me, Vader, is your Emperor stronger than you? The question hung in the air, dangerous and probing. Vader's respirator hissed 3 times before he answered. The Emperor is my master. I serve his will. That's not what I asked. Vegeta's eyes bored into Vader's mask. Is he stronger? If you fought him at full power, who would win? The silence stretched. Every stormtrooper present knew that even discussing such topics bordered on treason. Vader himself had executed subordinates for less seditious speculation. The Emperor's power is absolute, Vader finally said, but the answer felt hollow even through his vocabulary. Spoken like someone who's convinced themselves that chains are necessary, Vegeta said with something approaching pity. I served a master once, Frieza. He destroyed my home world, slaughtered my people, kept me leashed with threats and fear. I convinced myself it was necessary, that serving him made me strong. His fist clenched, Kai crackling around them. I was wrong. Real strength comes from breaking your chains, not polishing them. Vader felt something dangerous stirring in his chest, an emotion he'd buried beneath duty and dark side discipline for 2 decades. The being's words echoed thoughts he'd strangled in their infancy, questions he'd forbidden himself from asking. You understand nothing of the galaxy's realities, Vader said coldly. The Force binds all things. The Emperor has mastered that binding completely. There is no breaking such chains because they are the natural order. Then your Force is a cage dressed as philosophy, Vegeta replied, and you're too blind to see the bars. The accusation struck deeper than any Force lightning. Vader's hand tightened on his lightsaber hilt, torn between duty to destroy this heretic and curiosity about the being who just articulated his oldest, most forbidden doubts. Before either could speak again, the communication officer's voice crackled through the garrison speakers. Lord Vader, urgent transmission from the Emperor himself. He demands immediate report on the alien situation. Vader's attention shifted, pulled back to duty and hierarchy. He deactivated his lightsaber. This conversation is not finished. You will remain here until the Emperor decides your fate. I don't take orders, Vegeta said flatly, but I'll stay because I'm curious. This Emperor of yours, if he's truly as powerful as you claim, then perhaps this universe has one warrior worth my time after all. Vader turned and walked back to his ship, his mind churning with calculations and unwelcome questions. Behind him, Vegeta watched the Dark Lord retreat and felt a familiar frustration. Strong, yes. Skilled, certainly, but shackled by loyalty to a master who kept him leashed. It reminded him too much of his own past. And if there was one thing Vegeta hated more than weakness, it was wasted potential. The Sith Lord's ship ascended, leaving Vegeta alone with unconscious stormtroopers and a garrison full of terrified Imperials who just watched their supreme commander fight to a standstill. In orbit, Vader entered his meditation chamber and contacted the Emperor. Palpatine's hologram materialized, eyes gleaming with predatory interest. Fascinating, Lord Vader. A being immune to the Force yet wielding comparable power. Tell me everything. As Vader recounted the encounter, he found himself choosing words carefully. He reported facts, demonstrated concerns, recommended caution, but he did not mention the being's words about chains and masters. Those thoughts were dangerous. Those thoughts led to paths the dark side warned against. Those thoughts felt uncomfortably like truth. Emperor Palpatine sat upon his throne in the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. His withered fingers steepled beneath his chin, and smiled. The holographic report from Darth Vader played for the third time, each viewing revealing new intricacies in this unexpected gift the universe had delivered. A being from beyond their reality, immune to force manipulation, wielding power that registered on sensors as comparable to a star's fusion core, and most deliciously, one who openly defied imperial authority while possessing the strength to back that defiance. Magnificent, Palpatine whispered, his voice a rasp of ancient malevolence and genuine fascination. Lord Vader, you say this creature, this scion, demonstrated no connection to the Force whatsoever? None, my master. Vader's holographic form knelt in supplication across the light years separating them. I attempted Force grip, Sith lightning, and direct lightsaber confrontation. All proved ineffective. It exists outside the Force's dominion entirely, yet wields energy manipulation techniques of extraordinary sophistication. And it speaks of breaking chains, of surpassing masters. Palpatine's smile widened, showing yellow teeth. How very ambitious. Tell me, my apprentice, did these words trouble you? Vader's respirator hissed twice before responding. The being understands nothing of Sith philosophy or the necessity of order through strength. Its words were the arrogant posturing of a creature accustomed to overwhelming opposition through raw power alone. Indeed, Palpatine's tone suggested he believed not a word of Vader's dismissal. Yet you who have overthrown Jedi Masters and crushed rebellions with a thought could not overcome this single being. Curious, is it not, that one so small could resist the dark side's greatest living weapon? The rebuke was subtle but cutting. Vader remained kneeling, absorbing the criticism as he'd learned to do over decades of service. The being's power is formidable, but alien. Given time to analyze its energy signature, I am confident I could devise countermeasures. No, Palpatine said sharply. You will not engage it in further combat, not yet. This Vegeta represents an unprecedented opportunity, a source of power that exists beyond the Force's constraints. Such a being could be useful, if properly motivated. Master, it has demonstrated no inclination toward servitude. Its contempt for authority is absolute. All beings serve something, Lord Vader. The Jedi serve their precious light. You serve power and purpose. Even this Saiyan prince serves his pride. Palpatine leaned forward, his face shadowed beneath his hood. Pride is the easiest chain to forge. We need only discover what he values more than his arrogance. Vader understood immediately. The Emperor's manipulations were legendary, turning allies into enemies and enemies into tools with whispered words and carefully staged revelations. If Palpatine focused his full attention on this Vegeta, the being would find itself ensnared before recognizing the trap. What are your orders, my master? Extend an invitation to Coruscant. Offer resources to repair his vessel, access to Imperial technology, and an audience with me personally. Frame it not as submission, but as diplomatic courtesy between powerful entities. His pride will not allow him to refuse such recognition. Palpatine's laugh was dry as ancient parchment. And once he stands before me, we shall see if this being from beyond the Force can resist its supreme master. And if he refuses the invitation, then he will learn that the Empire's patience has limits. But I suspect he will accept. Warriors of his caliber hunger for challenges, and I have just offered him the greatest challenge this galaxy provides, an audience with unlimited power. The hologram flickered. Go, my apprentice, make the offer, and prepare our guest a reception worthy of his station. The transmission ended, leaving Vader alone with his thoughts and orders. He understood the Emperor's game: lure the being into proximity, study its abilities, exploit its weaknesses, and ultimately bend it to Imperial service or destroy it utterly. A strategy that had worked on Jedi, on senators, on entire civilizations. But Vegeta was not Jedi, not senator, not civilization. It was something that existed outside their framework entirely. And Vader, despite his certainty in the Emperor's supremacy, felt the faintest tremor of doubt. Not fear. He'd burned that weakness from his soul long ago. But strategic concern that they were inviting something into their heart that could not be controlled. He pushed the thought aside and returned to his flagship. Orders were orders. Doubt was weakness. The Emperor's will was absolute. On Raxus Prime, Vegeta had commandeered the garrison's training facility, a crude affair designed for stormtrooper conditioning drills, and was currently destroying their equipment through basic kata exercises. Each punch shattered reinforced Durasteel supports. Each kick reduced training dummies to component atoms. The facility's artificial gravity generators groaned under the stress of his ki fluctuations. His power was returning. Hour by hour, as his psion cells adapted to this universe's physical constants, he felt his strength approaching baseline levels. Another day, perhaps two, and he'd have full access to his transformations. Then this galaxy would learn what true power looked like. A garrison officer approached with visible terror, stopping well outside Vegeta's striking range. Lord Vader has returned. He requests your presence. Says he brings an offer from the Emperor himself. Vegeta stopped mid-strike, his fist hovering inches from a support beam. The Emperor, the Master Vader serves. He lowered his hand slowly. Very well. I'm curious what kind of being commands warriors of Vader's caliber. He followed the officer outside, where Vader's shuttle waited with boarding ramp extended. The Dark Lord stood at the ramp's base, his posture suggesting neither submission nor aggression, simply patience, as if he had all the time in the galaxy. The Emperor has extended an invitation, Vader stated without preamble. Travel to Coruscant, the Imperial capital. He offers resources to repair your vessel, access to our most advanced technology, and an audience to discuss your unique situation. This is not a command. It is an offer extended to one power to another. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. Your master wishes to meet me? Why? The Emperor's motivations are his own, but he recognizes strength when reports document it. You have defeated an Inquisitor, resisted orbital bombardment, and engaged me in combat without disadvantage. Such beings are rare. The Emperor collects rare things. I'm not a trophy to be collected, Vegeta said coldly. No, Vader agreed. You are an anomaly that threatens the galactic order through mere existence. The Emperor offers dialogue and resources. The alternative is continued Imperial attention until you are neutralized through superior numbers and strategic application of force. Even you cannot fight an entire galaxy. It was the most honest thing Vader had said since their first meeting, and Vegeta respected the directness. The Empire could indeed bring overwhelming force to bear. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers, planet-killing weapons he'd seen referenced in their databases. He could survive such an assault, perhaps even destroy significant portions of their fleet, but it would drain him completely in his current adapted but not optimal state. And for what? To prove a point to primitives? Better to meet this Emperor, assess the true power structure, and decide then whether this galaxy needed conquering or merely ignoring. I'll accept your invitation, Vegeta said, but understand this clearly. I come as an equal, not a subordinate. If your Emperor attempts to treat me as some servant to be commanded, I will demonstrate exactly why the Saiyan race conquered entire quadrants before our homeworld was destroyed. The Emperor understands power, Vader replied. He will afford you the respect your abilities warrant. The Sith Lord turned toward the shuttle. We depart immediately. The journey to Coruscant will take 37 standard hours. Vegeta followed him aboard, noting the shuttle's interior was designed for intimidation and function in equal measure. Black surfaces, harsh lighting, equipment designed for warfare rather than comfort. Very different from Capsule Corp's aesthetically pleasing designs, but effective in its own way. As the shuttle launched and docked with Vader's Star Destroyer, Vegeta felt the massive ship's engines engage. pulling them into hyperspace. The visual effect through the viewport was striking. Stars stretching into lines, then vanishing into a tunnel of swirling blue-white energy. Faster than light travel achieved through dimensional folding rather than raw speed. Primitive compared to instant transmission, but impressive for beings who couldn't sense ki. This hyperspace travel, Vegeta observed, how fast does it move us? We will cross 15,000 light-years in 37 hours, Vader replied. Standard hyperdrive routes through established lanes. The Emperor's summons warrants maximum speed. Vegeta did quick mental calculations. 15,000 light-years in under 2 days. Impressive velocity, though the reliance on established routes suggested limitations. And without these lanes? Hyperspace travel without mapped routes risks collision with gravity wells, supernovas, or mass shadows. Navigation computers calculate safe paths, but uncharted space remains dangerous. So you're fast but blind. Vegeta shook his head. In my universe, we have ships that can cross galaxies in weeks through superior technology. Your empire controls millions of worlds but is limited to known paths. Inefficient. The galaxy contains dangers your universe perhaps lacks, Vader said, unruffled by the criticism. We adapt to our reality's constraints. They fell into silence. Two warriors from different philosophies, sharing space but not camaraderie. Vegeta spent the journey studying the Star Destroyer's operations through observation and occasional questions. Vader spent it meditating on the Force, searching for guidance about the being that existed beyond its touch. Neither found the answers they sought. 36 hours later, the Executor dropped from hyperspace at the edge of the Coruscant system. Vegeta moved to the viewport and felt his breath catch it despite himself. Coruscant was a city, one single city covering an entire planet. Trillions of beings living in towers that reached into the atmosphere, sky lanes filled with millions of transports, orbital platforms, and defensive stations creating a shell around the world, like artificial moons. It was the most densely populated location he'd ever witnessed, exceeding even Earth's most crowded metropolises. The Imperial capital, Vader said from behind him. Heart of the Empire, home to the Emperor and seat of galactic governance. Impressive, Vegeta admitted grudgingly. Your empire may be primitive in some ways, but this shows organizational capability beyond most civilizations I've encountered. The Emperor's vision made this possible. Before his reign, the Republic sprawled inefficiently across the galaxy, weak and divided. He brought unity through strength. Through fear, Vegeta corrected. There's a difference. Peace is peace, regardless of the methods that achieve it. Vegeta turned from the viewport to face Vader directly. Tell me honestly, do you truly believe that? Or is it simply what you tell yourself to justify serving a master who keeps you leashed? Vader's respirator hissed 3 times. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge Vegeta hadn't heard before. You know nothing of my choices or their necessity. I serve because I choose to serve. Because the alternative is chaos that would consume billions. Or because you're afraid, Vegeta said quietly. Afraid that if you broke free, you'd discover you're not as strong as you believe. Afraid that without your Emperor's structure, you'd have to face who you really are. You presume much, Vader said coldly. I presume nothing. I recognize the symptoms because I suffered them myself. Vegeta's gaze was steady, almost pitying. I served Frieza for years, convinced myself it was pragmatism, that my survival and eventual revenge justified the humiliation. Every mission I completed for him, every world I conquered in his name, I told myself it was necessary, strategic, smart. And what changed? Vader asked despite himself. I became a Super Saiyan, achieved the legendary transformation my race believed was myth. In that moment, I finally had the power to challenge Frieza directly. Vegeta's fist clenched, Kai crackling briefly around his knuckles. But by then, someone else had already killed him. I'd spent so long serving and waiting that I missed my chance for vengeance. I learned that all my strategic patience was just cowardice, dressed in tactical clothing. Vader was silent for a long moment. Your situation is not mine. The Emperor is not this Frieza, and I am not waiting. I am fulfilling my purpose. Keep telling yourself that, Vegeta said, turning back to the viewport. But I've seen your eyes beneath that mask, Vader. Or rather, I've seen the absence of them. You hide behind armor and duty because facing what's underneath would require courage you no longer possess. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Vader could have struck him down, could have attempted Force lightning again, despite its proven ineffectiveness. But something in the being's words, the familiarity of the accusation, the echo of thoughts he'd strangled, stayed his hand. "We are approaching the Imperial Palace," Vader said instead, reverting to professional formality. "The Emperor awaits in his throne room. You will address him with respect or face consequences." "I'll address him as an equal," Vegeta replied. "If he's truly as powerful as you claim, he'll appreciate honest exchange over groveling submission. If he demands worship, he's weaker than you believe." The shuttle detached from the executor and descended through Coruscant's atmosphere, cutting through aerial traffic with priority clearance that sent civilian vessels scattering. The Imperial Palace grew larger in the viewport, a massive structure of dark stone and brutal architecture, crowned with transmission towers and defensive batteries. At its heart, the Emperor's throne room waited like a spider at the center of a galactic web. As they entered the palace's private hangar, Vegeta felt something shift in the air, an presence vast and ancient, regarding him with predatory curiosity. Not Kai, but something similar, consciousness projecting power across distance. The Emperor was aware of their arrival and watching. Good. Vegeta preferred enemies who paid attention. Vader led him through corridors of obsidian and crimson, past elite royal guards in blood-red armor who held force pikes at attention. The architecture was designed to intimidate, vast spaces that made visitors feel small, harsh angles that suggested violence, lighting that cast shadows even at noon. Every element calculated to reinforce imperial dominance and individual insignificance. Vegeta walked through it all with his head high and shoulders back, a prince unimpressed by peasant grandstanding. They reached the throne room's entrance, massive doors that required 6 guards to operate. The doors swung open with ponderous weight, revealing a chamber that stretched into shadows. At the far end, silhouetted against viewports showing Coruscant's cityscape, sat a throne. Upon that throne sat a figure in black robes, face hidden beneath a hood, radiating menace that made the air itself feel heavy. Emperor Palpatine, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, most powerful Sith Lord in history, gestured with one withered hand. "Welcome, Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans," his voice echoed through the chamber, simultaneously weak and overwhelming. "I have waited with such anticipation to meet a being who exists beyond the Force's touch. Come closer. Let us speak of power and what it truly means to rule." Vegeta walked forward, ignoring Vader's presence behind him, his boots echoing on polished stone. He stopped at the base of the throne steps and looked up at the hooded figure with analytical eyes. "You're the Emperor," he said flatly, "the one who commands this galaxy through fear and superior firepower. Let's skip the pleasantries. Why did you summon me? What do you want?" Palpatine's laugh was dry leaves rustling over graves. Direct, refreshing. Most beings who stand where you now stand are trembling with terror or anticipation. You radiate only curiosity. Tell me, Prince Vegeta, do you feel no fear at all? "Fear is for those who doubt their strength," Vegeta replied. "I know exactly what I'm capable of. The question is whether you do." "Oh, I know precisely what you're capable of," Palpatine said, leaning forward slightly. "You defeated my Inquisitor in seconds. You walked through orbital bombardment. You fought Lord Vader to a standstill. Impressive, unprecedented, fascinating. And now you want to control me," Vegeta said. "Chain me like you've chained Vader. Turn me into another weapon for your empire." "Control?" Palpatine's tone suggested amusement. "My dear boy, one does not control a force of nature. One directs it, channels it, offers it purpose greater than aimless wandering." He stood slowly, his movements suggesting age and fragility that the aura around him contradicted completely. "You are stranded in our galaxy, Prince Vegeta. Your vessel is damaged. You understand nothing of our politics, our factions, our threats. I offer knowledge, resources, purpose. In exchange for what? Service, Palpatine said simply. Occasional tasks suited to your unique abilities. Threats that conventional forces cannot address. In return, you receive everything the Empire's vast resources can provide. Technology, information, even assistance returning to your origin universe, should such a thing prove possible. Vegeta studied the Emperor with narrowed eyes. The offer was logical, almost reasonable, but every instinct screamed warning. This being radiated the same manipulative intelligence Frieza had possessed, the same casual cruelty dressed in pragmatic language. He'd fallen for such offers before. He would not repeat that mistake. I don't serve, Vegeta said coldly. Not anymore. I learned that lesson in blood and humiliation. Everyone serves something, Palpatine replied, echoing his earlier words to Vader. You serve your pride, your desire to prove Saiyan superiority, your endless hunger for greater challenges. He descended one step, and the shadows seemed to descend with him. I merely offer to align your service with opportunity rather than have it wasted on pointless conflict. You're manipulating me, Vegeta stated, using the same techniques your empire uses on everyone. Offer benefits, imply threats, make submission seem like partnership. I am offering you choice, Palpatine corrected. Accept partnership and gain everything the galaxy offers. Refuse and remain stranded on primitive worlds, fighting endless battles against beings too weak to challenge you, wasting your potential on meaningless victories. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire chamber. Is that truly what a prince desires? To be forgotten in a galaxy that will never know his name? The words struck precisely where Vegeta was most vulnerable. His pride, his need for recognition, his terror of insignificance. Palpatine had identified his weakness in under 5 minutes of conversation, and Vegeta recognized the manipulation for exactly what it was. You're skilled, he admitted. I'll give you that. You identified my pride and weaponized it faster than most beings could identify their own fingers. But I've faced a master manipulator before. Babidi, a wizard who specialized in exploiting darkness and pride to create servants. He tried to control me through similar methods. Vegeta's ki began to manifest visibly, white gold energy crackling around him like barely contained lightning. It didn't work then. It won't work now. Palpatine's smile vanished. Lord Vader, demonstrate to our guest the consequences of refusing Imperial generosity. Vader ignited his lightsaber, but before he could move, Vegeta's power spiked. Not to full Super Saiyan levels, not yet, but enough to make the throne room's structural supports groan and every viewport crack with pressure differentials. I came here in good faith, Vegeta said, his voice carrying an edge of barely controlled violence. I accepted your invitation as one ruler to another. If you're about to demonstrate that was a mistake, then understand this clearly. I've destroyed tyrants before. Adding another to the list would be no inconvenience at all. The throne room fell silent except for Vader's respirator and the crackling of Vegeta's aura. Two wills, two philosophies, two representations of ultimate power stared at each other across meters that suddenly felt like battlefields. Palpatine's smile returned slowly. Fascinating. You truly cannot be intimidated. Even knowing the full might of the Galactic Empire stands ready to crush you, you maintain absolute confidence. He raised one hand, and Vader deactivated his lightsaber. Very well. Consider my offer withdrawn. You are free to leave. Repair your vessel with your own resources. Navigate our galaxy without Imperial support. And when you inevitably require assistance, remember that I offered cooperation first. I'll remember, Vegeta said, backing toward the door without turning his back on the Emperor, a warrior's instinct. And when I've repaired my ship and decided whether this galaxy is worth my time, I'll remember that the first being to try manipulating me was you. He turned and walked toward the exit, his Kai still flaring as warning and statement. Vader moved to follow, but Palpatine raised one hand. Let him go, my apprentice. He will return. They always do, when the galaxy's realities exceed their arrogance. The Emperor's eyes gleam beneath his hood, and when he does, he will be far more receptive to guidance. Vegeta left the throne room, left the palace, and commandeered an Imperial shuttle through sheer force of presence, the pilot wisely choosing not to resist. As he piloted away from Coruscant, watching the planet city recede behind him, he felt a familiar mixture of satisfaction and frustration. He'd maintained his pride and independence, but he'd also made an enemy of the galaxy's supreme power without securing resources or allies. Strategic, it was not. But sometimes pride mattered more than strategy. Sometimes staying unchained was worth fighting an entire galaxy. Behind him on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine sat upon his throne and smiled. The Scion had refused. Perfect. Refusal meant pride maintained. Pride maintained meant inevitable desperation, and desperation opened doors that offers never could. Lord Vader, he said softly, ensure our guest encounters difficulties. Nothing overtly imperial. Simply ensure that his repairs require components he cannot easily acquire, that beings who might assist him meet unfortunate accidents. Make his independence as costly as possible. As you command, my master. And Vader? This being troubles you, I sense it. His words about chains and masters echo thoughts you believe buried. Vader's respirator hissed. He understands nothing of our reality. Perhaps, or perhaps he understands it too well, and that frightens you more than any enemy ever has. Palpatine's laugh was ancient malevolence. Fear not, my apprentice. Your chains are mine to hold, and I never relinquish what belongs to me. Vader bowed and departed, leaving the Emperor alone with his machinations and certainties. Neither master nor apprentice noticed the tiny probe droid that had recorded Vegeta's entire audience. Neither knew that those recordings were already being transmitted across rebel channels, carrying a message that would shake the Alliance to its core. Someone had stood before the Emperor and walked away unbowed. And if one being could defy unlimited power, perhaps others could as well. The stolen Imperial shuttle limped through the Outer Rim territories on failing repulsor engines and a hyperdrive that sparked with every jump. Vegeta had learned, through trial and frustrating error, that appropriating an Imperial vessel came with consequences, namely that the Empire had tracking protocols embedded in everything from nav computers to life support systems. He'd ripped out half the shuttle's systems to eliminate surveillance, which also eliminated most of its functionality. The result was a barely operational transport that made his gravity chamber pod look like cutting-edge technology. He'd spent 3 standard days attempting repairs on various backwater worlds, only to discover that Imperial components required Imperial manufacturing, Imperial tools, and Imperial authorization codes he didn't possess. The local mechanics he'd encountered took one look at the shuttle's military-grade systems and either refused service or quoted prices that assumed he possessed Imperial credits. He possessed no credits of any kind. Pathetic, Vegeta muttered, staring at the shuttle's main power coupling that had fused itself into uselessness during the last hyperspace jump. His pod's advanced capsule corp engineering could self-repair minor damage given time and energy. This primitive vessel fell apart if he looked at it wrong. An entire galaxy of supposedly advanced civilizations, and they can't build a ship that survives basic operation. The shuttle's comm system crackled, one of the few components still functioning. Unidentified shuttle, this is Ord Mantell Spaceport Control. You're leaking radiation and transmitting an Imperial distress beacon. State your status and authorization. Vegeta considered his options. He could identify himself honestly, which would bring Imperial forces down on his position within hours. He could claim to be a stranded merchant, which would require documentation he didn't have. Or he could simply land without authorization and deal with whatever local security forces tried to stop him. The third option aligned most closely with his personality. I'm landing in Bay 17, he announced, checking the shuttle's basic sensors. Anyone who attempts to prevent this will regret their interference. Negative, shuttle. You do not have clearance to... Vegeta switched off the comm and guided the dying vessel toward the planet's surface. Ord Mantell sprawled beneath him. A world of industrial cities, smuggler havens, and the sort of lawless territories where Imperial authority existed more as suggestion than absolute rule. According to the navigational data he'd extracted before gutting the system, this world catered to bounty hunters, criminals, and various beings who preferred to operate outside official channels. Perfect. Such individuals would have access to black market components and the technical expertise to install them without asking inconvenient questions about Imperial authorization codes. The shuttle's landing was less controlled descent and more barely prevented crash. Vegeta set down in Bay 17 with enough force to crack the landing pad's duracrete surface and trigger proximity alarms across half the spaceport. He stepped out into polluted air, thick with industrial fumes and the acrid smell of burning fuel, surveying his surroundings with tactical assessment. The spaceport was a chaotic sprawl of landing platforms, repair shops, cantinas, and establishments advertising services he didn't recognize. Beings of a dozen species moved through the crowds, humans obviously, but also green-skinned humanoids with head tails, insectoid creatures with multiple arms, massive furry beings that towered over their companions, a far cry from Earth's relatively homogeneous population. You! A protocol droid painted in Spaceport Authority colors tottered toward him on stiff legs, its photoreceptors flickering with administrative outrage. That was the worst landing I've witnessed in 3,742 days of operation. You've damaged municipal property, violated 7 safety regulations, and the droid stopped abruptly as Vegeta turned his full attention on it. And I'm sure there are perfectly reasonable explanations for all of this. I need ship repairs, Vegeta stated. Components, technical expertise, and no questions about Imperial authorization. Where do I acquire these things? Sir, I must inform you that unauthorized repairs to Imperial vessels are illegal under... Vegeta raised one hand, and a small Kai sphere materialized in his palm. Just large enough to demonstrate capability, not large enough to actually destroy anything. Yet, I asked a question. I expect an answer that doesn't waste my time with bureaucratic nonsense. The droid's vocabulator stuttered. Bay 43, mechanic named Score Twi'lek, specializes in discreet work. Very discreet. Please don't vaporize me. Vegeta dismissed the energy sphere and walked away, leaving the droid to its administrative panic. Bay 43 sat in the spaceport's seedier section, where the landing platforms showed scorch marks from suspicious fires, and the establishments advertised no Imperial entanglements as selling points. A faded sign marked the entrance. Scores, salvage, and repair. If we can't fix it, it's probably stolen. The bay itself was an organized chaos of starship parts, tools scattered across workbenches, and droids in various states of disassembly. A blue-skinned Twi'lek, head-tails wrapped in work cloth, goggles pushed up on her forehead, looked up from a disassembled hyperdrive motivator, and fixed Vegeta with suspicious eyes. We're closed, she said flatly. Come back never. You're Score. You repair ships without Imperial oversight. Vegeta gestured back toward Bay 17. I have a shuttle with damaged power couplings, fried hyperdrive regulators, and a navigation computer I personally destroyed to eliminate tracking systems. Fix it. Score set down her hydrospanner with deliberate care. First, I don't take orders from random strangers who walk into my shop making demands. Second, you're describing Imperial military-grade systems that are illegal for civilians to possess. Third, you just admitted to destroying Imperial property. And fourth, she paused, studying him more carefully. You're not human, are you? What species even are you? Scion, the only one in this galaxy. Vegeta crossed his arms. And I'm not asking. I'm commissioning work from someone who allegedly possesses the necessary skills. Name your price. My price for touching hot Imperial tech? Score laughed bitterly. How about not getting executed when the Empire inevitably traces that shuttle here? You want to commit suicide? Go find a bridge. Don't drag my business into it. Vegeta's patience, already strained by days of mechanical failures and bureaucratic obstacles, frayed completely. His ki aura flared to life, white gold energy crackling around him, making tools rattle on workbenches and lights flicker. I have destroyed planets. I have conquered civilizations. I once served the most powerful tyrant in my universe before surpassing and contributing to his downfall. Your empire is primitive, your technology is laughable, and the only reason I'm asking politely is because I'm currently adapting to your galaxy's inferior physics. He leaned forward, eyes burning with barely contained violence. Fix my ship, or I'll find someone who will after you're no longer occupying this repair bay. Score stared at him for 3 heartbeats. Then impossibly, she smiled. Now that's more like it. I hate customers who grovel. Shows no backbone. She pulled her goggles down, transforming from suspicious business owner to professional mechanic. But here's reality. I can fix your shuttle, but not with Imperial components. Those are tracked, serialized, and monitored. You want off-grid repairs? You need black market parts, and those cost credits you obviously don't have. Then how do I acquire these credits? Vegeta asked, forcing his aura to dissipate. Work, jobs, bounties. Score gestured to a datapad on her desk. This is the outer rim. Half the economy runs on illegal activities, and the other half pretends not to notice. You want parts? Earn currency? You want currency? Prove you're useful. Vegeta examined the datapad, scrolling through what appeared to be employment listings. Most involved hauling cargo, providing security, or eliminating problematic individuals for various unsavory employers. All beneath a warrior prince, but practical necessity had often required temporary humiliation. These bounties, he said slowly, explain them. Bounty hunting. Someone does something illegal or pisses off someone powerful. A price gets put on their head, alive, dead, doesn't matter depending on the bounty. Hunters track them down, collect them, turn them in for credits. Score pulled up a different screen. See this? Cal Surin, smuggler, wanted by the Hutt cartel for stealing spice shipments. 50,000 credits, dead or alive. That'd cover your repairs with change to spare. And how do I locate this Cal Surin? That's the hunter's job. Track leads, follow rumors, use skills or tech to find them. Most hunters work with informants, use tracking fobs, monitor spaceport traffic. She eyed him speculatively. But you're not most hunters, are you? What exactly can you do besides make scary light shows and threaten mechanics? Vegeta considered the question. His scouter was non-functional in this universe, but his Kai-sensing abilities worked fine once he understood what he was feeling. This galaxy's inhabitants all possessed life energy, even if it wasn't true Kai. He'd sensed Vader from kilometers away. Finding one smuggler on a planet of millions would be challenging, but not impossible. I can sense living beings across vast distances, he said. I can move faster than your species can perceive. I can survive in vacuum and extreme environments without equipment, and I can destroy anything your technology can build. He met her eyes directly. Will that suffice for bounty hunting? Score's head-tails twitched, apparently a Twi'lek expression of surprise or amusement. Buddy, if you can do half of what you claim, you'll be the most effective hunter in the sector. She pulled up more information. Cal Surin was last spotted on Nar Shaddaa 3 days ago. Hutt-controlled moon, total cesspool, perfect hiding spot. You bring him back here, alive preferably, the Hutts pay more for live prisoners, and I'll fix your shuttle personally. Agreed. Vegeta memorized the smuggler's appearance from the bounty posting. And after the repairs? After repairs, you get gone before Imperial entanglements find their way to my door. Deal? Deal. Vegeta appropriated a smaller, less conspicuous transport from Score's impound lot. She'd called it borrowing, but made clear she'd report it stolen if he didn't return with payment, and set course for Nar Shaddaa. The transport was ancient, ugly, and barely functional, but it moved through hyperspace without exploding, which already made it superior to the Imperial shuttle. Nar Shaddaa emerged from hyperspace like a wound on reality. A moon covered entirely in city sprawl, neon signs advertising vice in 100 languages, orbital platforms serving as smuggler havens. Where Coruscant projected imperial order through architectural intimidation, Nar Shaddaa embraced chaos and called it freedom. Vegeta navigated to the lower levels where atmospheric processors created perpetual twilight and the smell of industrial runoff mixed with cooking food and chemical smoke. According to Score's information, Cal Surin frequented a cantina called the Rusty Minnock in Sector 87, an establishment known for its policy of not asking questions and not answering them either. The cantina was exactly as unpleasant as its reputation suggested. Dim lighting barely illuminated tables occupied by beings of questionable legality, drinking liquids of questionable origin. A Bith band played music that somehow managed to be both too loud and insufficiently interesting. The bartender, a four-armed basilisk, watched everyone with the paranoid alertness of someone who'd survived multiple shootouts in his own establishment. Vegeta walked to the bar, his exotic appearance drawing stares from every patron. To their credit, most looked away quickly, survival instinct warning them against prolonged attention. "I'm looking for Cal Surin," Vegeta announced. "Point me to him, and I'll leave without destroying anything." The bartender's four eyes narrowed. "Don't know anyone by that name, and making threats is bad for business." Vegeta could sense the lie immediately, the slight elevation in life energy that accompanied deception, the tension in the being's musculature. But before he could press the issue, a blaster bolt scorched the air past his head, striking the bar where he'd been standing a moment earlier. The cantina erupted into chaos. Half the patrons drew weapons, the other half dove for cover, and several took advantage of the confusion to settle old grudges with preemptive violence. Vegeta tracked the shot's origin to a corner booth where a human male, matching Cal Surin's description, was already moving toward the rear exit. "Leaving so soon?" Vegeta moved. To the cantina's patrons, he simply vanished. One instant standing at the bar, the next blocking the exit with arms crossed, an expression promising violence. Cal Surin skidded to a halt, eyes wide with a panic that suggested he'd encountered many dangerous situations, but none quite like this. "What are you?" the smuggler gasped. "Inconvenienced." Vegeta grabbed Surin by the collar before the man could raise his blaster again. "You have a bounty. I have a need for credits. This works out efficiently for me, less so for you." Surin's hand moved toward a thermal detonator at his belt. A desperate move, but desperate beings rarely thought clearly. Vegeta caught the hand, squeezed just hard enough to fracture the bones, and plucked the detonator away. "You were going to detonate an explosive device in an enclosed space, killing everyone including yourself rather than face capture? That's either admirable dedication or remarkable stupidity. The Hutts will torture me for weeks," Surin whimpered. "Kill me quick or let me go. Please." Vegeta considered the request. He had no particular loyalty to Hutt justice. The bounty specified dead or alive, and dealing with a corpse was simpler than transporting a living prisoner. But something about executing a defeated opponent without honor sat wrong. A remnant of Saiyan pride that even decades of pragmatic violence hadn't completely eroded. "Tell me why you stole from the Hutts," he said, "and depending on the answer, I'll decide whether you die." "Does it matter?" Surin asked bitterly. "No, but I'm curious, and I have 3 minutes before the rest of this cantina finishes killing each other and remembers I'm here. Talk." The smuggler sagged in Vegeta's grip. "The Hutts use spice running as a front for slave trafficking, ship medical supplies and food to outer colonies, return with voluntary contract workers who are anything but voluntary. I couldn't keep transporting children to their slavery pens, so I took payment in spice and planned to expose the operation to rebel intelligence." Vegeta absorbed this, his expression unchanging. "You jeopardized your life for strangers' freedom. Why?" "Because someone has to," Surin said simply. "The Empire doesn't care. The Hutts profit, and the innocent suffer. If beings like me don't stand up, who will?" The Saiyan prince stood silent for 3 heartbeats, processing this statement against his worldview. In his universe, the strong dominated the weak through simple natural law. Frieza had conquered because he possessed the power to conquer. Vegeta had served because he lacked the strength to refuse. But this pathetic smuggler, weak by any measure, had chosen principle over survival. It was simultaneously admirable and infuriating. "You're an idiot," Vegeta said finally. "Sacrificing yourself accomplishes nothing. The Hutts will continue their operations with or without your moral objections." "Probably," Surin agreed, "but I'll have died knowing I didn't enable it anymore." Vegeta released the smuggler, shoving him toward the rear exit. "Leave. Get off this moon. If I see you again, I'll complete the bounty without conversation." Surin stared in disbelief. "You're letting me go. I'm choosing not to waste time delivering you to beings I have no loyalty to. Don't confuse mercy with kindness. I simply find your Hutts distasteful." Vegeta's eyes hardened. "And if you're captured by other hunters, Don't expect similar consideration. The smuggler fled without further questions, disappearing into Nar Shaddah's lower levels. Vegeta turned back to the cantina's chaos. 3 beings unconscious from the crossfire, 2 more engaged in a knife fight over unclear grievances. The bartender calmly cleaning glasses as if violence was merely background ambiance. You just let a 50,000 credit bounty walk away, the basilisk observed. I did. Vegeta approached the bar again. Are there other bounties available? Preferably ones that don't involve delivering beings to slavery operations. The bartender's 4 eyes widened slightly. You've got principles. Interesting. Most hunters would have taken the credits and justified it later. He pulled up a datapad. Let me show you something. These bounties are all criminals without the sob stories. Murderers, Imperial collaborators who've gone rogue, pirates who prey on civilian transports. Still interested in earning those credits? Vegeta examined the listings with growing satisfaction. Violence with purpose, threats eliminated, currency acquired, all without compromising what little honor he still claimed. Show me the most dangerous one, he said. I prefer challenges. The bartender highlighted a specific entry. Zan Helix, former Imperial Inquisitor, who went rogue after the Emperor ordered his entire squad executed for failure. He's been killing Imperial officers and rebel leaders indiscriminately, believing both sides are equally corrupt. Wanted by literally everyone. 150,000 credits alive, 75,000 dead. An Inquisitor! Vegeta's interest sharpened. Like the one I fought on Raxus Prime. Where is he? Last spotted on Lothal, in the old Jedi Temple ruins. He's apparently searching for ancient knowledge to increase his power, planning something big. The bartender leaned forward. Fair warning, Zan Helix killed 3 separate hunter teams who went after him. He's not some small-time smuggler. He's a genuine threat. Perfect. Vegeta turned toward the exit. When I return with confirmation of completion, I expect the bounty transferred immediately. Wait, you're going after him now? Alone? Without preparation? Vegeta paused at the doorway, looking back with the first genuine smile the bartender had seen from him. Preparation is for beings who doubt their capabilities. I am Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans. This Inquisitor will learn the difference between Force users and real warriors. He departed into Nar Shaddah's neon chaos, leaving the bartender shaking his head. Either the most confident being I've ever met or the most suicidal. Maybe both. Above the moon, Imperial probe droids recorded Vegeta's movements and transmitted data to the nearest Star Destroyer. Emperor Palpatine's orders had been explicit. Let the Saiyans struggle. Let him realize that survival in their galaxy required resources only the Empire could provide. Every difficulty, every obstacle, would slowly erode his independence until cooperation seemed like his own idea. But the Emperor's agents watching Nar Shaddaa noted something unexpected. The being hadn't just taken the easy bounty. He'd shown principle, refusing payment that required participating in slavery. That suggested values beyond mere pride or self-interest. That suggested he might be harder to manipulate than anticipated. On Coruscant, Palpatine reviewed the reports and frowned beneath his hood. The Saiyan was adapting too quickly, finding alternatives too readily. Perhaps more direct pressure was required. Lord Vader, he said into the darkness, contact our agents on Lothal. Ensure this rogue Inquisitor receives assistance. If the Saiyan wants to play hero, let's make certain his heroism is tested to destruction. Either he breaks or we learn his limits. Both outcomes serve our purposes. Vader bowed and departed, his own thoughts troubled. The Emperor's manipulations grew more aggressive, more direct. And somewhere in his mechanical heart, in the buried remnants of Anakin Skywalker, something stirred uncomfortably at the thought of deliberately orchestrating another being's suffering just to force submission. But orders were orders. And Vader, despite all his power, remained eternally obedient. For now. Lothal hung against the void like a jewel of forgotten potential, a world of amber grasslands, abandoned Imperial factories, and ruins that predated the Empire by millennia. Vegeta's borrowed transport descended through scattered clouds, guided by coordinates the basilisk bartender had provided, along with a stern warning, The Jedi Temple is protected by old security systems and force traps. Most beings who enter don't come out. Vegeta had responded that most beings weren't Saiyan princes. The temple revealed itself as his transport crested a ridge, a structure carved from stone that rose from the grasslands like a monument to forgotten philosophies. Ancient columns supported weathered archways, and symbols he didn't recognize covered every surface. The architecture spoke of age, purpose, and abandonment in equal measure. Whatever civilization built this place had possessed sophistication his first impression of this galaxy hadn't credited. He set down half a kilometer from the temple's entrance and approached on foot. His ki senses extended to maximum range. Life energies flickered throughout the structure. Small creatures nesting in the ruins, insects adapted to the stone corridors, and one powerful signature deep within the temple's heart. That last presence radiated focused malevolence, similar to Vader's aura, but less disciplined, more volatile. The Rogue Inquisitor. The temple's entrance stood open, ancient doors long since reduced to rust and memory. Vegeta stepped inside and immediately sensed something wrong. The air itself felt hostile, not physically, but in a way that suggested conscious opposition. The Force presumably recognizing an intruder who existed outside its framework. Fascinating, he murmured, examining the sensation. The Force pushed against his presence like magnets repelling each other. Not painful, not dangerous, just unwelcoming, as if reality itself objected to his existence here. Your mystical energy field has opinions. How primitive. He ventured deeper, following corridors that branched and twisted according to architectural logic he didn't immediately grasp. Every surface showed signs of battle. Blaster scoring, lightsaber marks, sections of wall reduced to rubble. The hunter teams the bartender mentioned had clearly encountered resistance beyond the Rogue Inquisitor himself. A section of floor collapsed beneath his feet. Pressure plate trap, crude but effective against beings who couldn't fly. Vegeta simply levitated over the pit, noting the spike-lined bottom with clinical disinterest. More traps followed. Energy barriers that would have incinerated normal tissue, projectile launchers hidden in walls, even a sophisticated illusion that showed the corridor ending in a solid wall when sensors proved it continued beyond. Jedi security measures, Vegeta assessed, designed to confound Force users and eliminate conventional threats. Unfortunately for the architects, I'm neither. The temple's central chamber opened before him like a cathedral to forgotten beliefs. The ceiling soared 30 meters high, supported by columns carved with depictions of robed figures wielding lightsabers against shadowy opponents. At the chamber center stood an altar of black stone, and upon that altar sat a pyramid-shaped object that pulsed with energy Vegeta could feel even without Force sensitivity. A Jedi holocron. The bartender had mentioned these. Ancient repositories of Force knowledge, accessible only to those trained in specific techniques. You can sense it, a voice echoed through the chamber. Impossible. The holocron only responds to Force sensitives. Yet you, an aberration, a void in the Force, you sense its power regardless. Zan Helix emerged from behind a column. The Rogue Inquisitor was human, thin to the point of emaciation, his face marked with self-inflicted scars that formed patterns suggesting either ritual significance or psychological fracture. His lightsaber hung unignited at his belt, but his posture radiated coiled readiness. You must be the target, Vegeta said, unimpressed by the theatrical entrance. Zan Helix, former Imperial servant, current annoyance to multiple factions. I'm here to collect the bounty on your head. Another hunter. Helix laughed, the sound carrying an edge of hysteria barely contained. They sent 50 beings to claim me. 50 corpses now fertilize Lothal's grasslands. What makes you think you'll fare better? They were weak. Vegeta crossed his arms, studying the Inquisitor with analytical eyes. You're weak. This entire galaxy is weak. The only question is how quickly you accept that reality before I'm forced to demonstrate it. Helix's expression shifted from contempt to genuine curiosity. You're not from this galaxy. I sense nothing from you. No connection to the Force, no echo in its currents. Yet you project power that makes my teeth ache. His hand moved to his lightsaber hilt. What are you? Saiyan, The last of my kind in this universe. Vegeta's stance remained casual, but his Kai began manifesting as visible aura. And I'm exceptionally tired of beings asking that question before they die. The Inquisitor ignited his lightsaber, a double-bladed weapon identical to the Eighth Brothers, crimson plasma extending from both ends of the hilt. I've killed Jedi Masters. I've destroyed Rebel commanders. I've even wounded Lord Vader during my escape from Imperial service. You may possess strange powers, but you're not immortal. Neither are you, Vegeta replied. But let's discover whose mortality matters today. Helix attacked with the refined brutality of formal Inquisitor training, spinning strikes designed to overwhelm defenses, acrobatic maneuvers that leverage force-enhanced agility, sequences that had been perfected through centuries of Sith combat doctrine. Against a Jedi, against a conventional warrior, the assault would have been overwhelming. Vegeta caught the spinning lightsaber mid-rotation with one hand. The plasma blade stopped cold, magnetic containment field completely neutralized by focused key manipulation. Helix stared in disbelief as his weapon, capable of cutting through blast doors, failed to even mark the alien's palm. You've made a mistake, Vegeta said calmly. You assumed your force abilities and plasma sword made you formidable. They don't. They make you predictable. He yanked the lightsaber forward, pulling Helix off balance, and struck the Inquisitor's solar plexus with a palm strike that sent him crashing through two stone columns. Helix struggled to his feet, blood trickling from his mouth. His confidence shattered along with several ribs. Impossible. You shouldn't be able to touch the blade. The Force. I don't care about your Force. Vegeta advanced slowly, deliberately. I've fought beings who could destroy solar systems with a thought. I've trained in environments that would atomize your body in seconds. Your mystical energy manipulation is parlor tricks compared to the battles I've survived. The rogue Inquisitor retreated, his tactical mind racing through options and finding none promising. His force abilities proved useless. Telekinesis couldn't grip something that existed outside the Force's influence. Lightning was absorbed by whatever energy field the being projected. Even force-enhanced precognition failed, because there was no future to read from something the Force couldn't touch. He was fighting blind against an opponent who countered every advantage the dark side granted. You fear death, Vegeta observed, watching Helix's retreat. Your entire philosophy, this dark side you serve, promises power through passion and strength. Yet when confronted by genuine superior force, you run like a coward. I'm not running, Helix spat. I'm adapting. He raised both hands and the temple itself responded. Columns cracked. The ceiling groaned. Massive stone blocks tore free from their millennia-old moorings, manipulated by force power channeled through desperate fury. If I can't kill you directly, I'll bury you under a mountain of rubble. The temple began collapsing in earnest. Tons of stone falling with lethal velocity. Ancient architecture transformed into improvised weapons through force manipulation. Any normal being would have been crushed instantly. Any Jedi would have struggled to maintain defensive barriers against such massive assault. Vegeta simply stood there as rubble struck his Kiora and shattered. Fragments ranging from pebbles to boulder-sized chunks rained down, each impact releasing energy sufficient to pulverize Durasteel. His barrier absorbed everything, converting kinetic force into harmless, dissipating energy. When the collapse finally stopped, leaving the temple's central chamber a ruin of dust and destruction, Vegeta stood in a perfect circle of untouched floor, not a speck of dirt on his armor. Are you finished? He asked mildly. Helix staggered backward, all strategy abandoning him in favor of primal panic. This being was unstoppable. Everything the Inquisitorius had taught him, every technique the dark side offered, proved completely irrelevant. He might as well be attacking with harsh language for all the effect it had. Wait, he gasped. We can make a deal. I have knowledge. Ancient Sith techniques, Imperial secrets, locations of hidden Jedi survivors. I can be useful. Vegeta considered the offer. Information about this galaxy's power structures could prove valuable. The Inquisitor was defeated, broken, no longer a threat. Pragmatically, keeping him alive served strategic purposes. But something in the being's desperate bargaining triggered memories Vegeta tried to suppress. Memories of begging Frieza for his life during their first encounter, promises of useful service, Shameful pleas from a prince who'd learned that survival sometimes required swallowing pride until it choked you. "You're offering to serve me to avoid death," Vegeta said quietly. "You'll provide information, prove your usefulness, convince me that your life has value beyond immediate elimination." His expression hardened. "I made similar offers once, to a tyrant who used my desperation as chains. I will not become that tyrant." "Then spare me," Helix pleaded. "Show mercy. I'll leave this galaxy, disappear into the unknown regions, never—" "I'm not sparing you." Vegeta raised one hand, golden ki coalescing into a sphere. "I'm executing a threat, cleanly, without torture or humiliation. Your death will be quick because I respect your strength, even as I acknowledge its insufficiency." The ki blast formed completely, crackling with lethal power. "That's more mercy than you showed your victims." The final flash vaporized Zan Helix instantly. No pain, no final words, simply existence ending in a flash of golden light. Vegeta lowered his hand, staring at the scorch mark where the Inquisitor had stood, and felt the familiar emptiness that followed eliminating defeated opponents. Victory without satisfaction, power without purpose, the endless cycle of proving superiority to beings who couldn't challenge him even if they tried. "This galaxy is weak," he muttered. "Even their strongest fall in seconds." A slow clapping echoed through the ruined chamber. Vegeta spun, ki flaring to combat readiness, and found himself facing a figure that emerged from shadows that shouldn't have hidden anyone. A woman in dark robes, face concealed behind a mask of polished metal, presence radiating danger his senses had somehow missed entirely. "Impressive," she said, voice modulated by the mask into mechanical precision. "You eliminated an Inquisitor trained by Vader himself in under 3 minutes. The Emperor's reports didn't exaggerate your capabilities." "Identify yourself," Vegeta demanded, "and explain how you concealed your presence from my senses." "Force cloaking, a technique few master, allowing one to hide completely from both conventional detection and supernatural awareness." She lowered her hood, revealing the mask more clearly. Black metal inscribed with symbols similar to the Sith iconography he'd seen in Imperial databases. "I am the fifth sister, Inquisitor. The Emperor sent me to observe your conflict resolution methods." "The Emperor?" Vegeta's eyes narrowed. "So he's still trying to manipulate me, using indirect approaches after direct offers failed. The Emperor believes you'll eventually recognize that cooperation serves your interests better than independence." The fifth sister circled slowly, her movements predatory and calculated. "Consider your situation objectively. You need resources. You need information. You need repairs for damaged equipment. Fighting the entire galaxy to obtain these things is possible, but inefficient. Partnership offers what violence cannot: sustainable support." "I don't need lectures on efficiency from someone who hides in shadows." Vegeta tracked her movements, noting the lightsaber at her belt, the confident stance of a trained killer. "If the Emperor wants partnership, he should stop sending observers and spies. It's insulting. You mistake observation for manipulation. I'm here to report, not recruit." She stopped circling, facing him directly. "But I'm curious. You spared a smuggler on Nar Shaddaa, refused payment that required supporting slavery. Yet you just executed an Inquisitor without hesitation. Explain the ethical distinction." "The smuggler chose principle over survival, rare in any universe, worthy of acknowledgement." Vegeta's expression remained cold. "The Inquisitor served tyranny, murdered without honor, and begged for life he didn't grant his victims. He earned death. The distinction is simple." "So you do possess morality beyond simple dominance hierarchies," the fifth sister observed. "Interesting. Most beings who project such power eventually abandon ethical constraints entirely. You maintain them despite having strength sufficient to ignore all consequences." "Power without discipline is wasted energy," Vegeta replied. "I learned that lesson fighting opponents who believed raw strength excused any action. They're all dead now, destroyed by beings who understood that true power requires more than brute force. Yet you destroyed this Inquisitor with exactly that: overwhelming force that rendered his skills irrelevant." "Because his skills were irrelevant, Vegeta countered. I match my power to the threat. Against weaker opponents, I use appropriate force. Against genuine challenges, I'll access transformations that would vaporize this entire region. The difference is control, not capacity. The fifth sister nodded slowly. You're more sophisticated than initial reports suggested. The Emperor anticipated a brute warrior, easily provoked, simplistically motivated. Instead, you demonstrate tactical thinking and principled behavior, despite possessing power that could ignore both. Your Emperor's assumptions are his weakness, Vegeta said. He views everyone through the lens of his own philosophy. Domination through fear, service through desperation. He can't comprehend beings who operate outside his framework. Perhaps. The Inquisitor turned toward the exit, her presence already beginning to fade through force cloaking. Or perhaps he comprehends you better than you realize. After all, you're currently working bounties to earn credits for ship repairs, exactly the resource dependency he predicted would eventually force negotiation. She vanished into shadow before Vegeta could respond, leaving him alone in the ruined temple with a corpse's ashes and growing frustration. The observation stung because it carried uncomfortable truth. He was dependent on local resources, forced to participate in this galaxy's economy despite his superiority to its inhabitants. The Emperor's strategy was working, not through direct confrontation, but through making independence increasingly costly. Vegeta examined the holocron still resting on its altar, considering taking it. Ancient knowledge could prove valuable, and clearly, the device contained information worth a rogue Inquisitor's obsession. But his hands weren't force-sensitive. Whatever secrets it held would remain locked without proper interface techniques. He left it there, a monument to knowledge he couldn't access, and a reminder that power alone didn't grant universal solutions. The journey back to Nar Shaddaa passed in contemplative silence. Vegeta found himself replaying conversations with Vader, the Emperor, even the fifth sister. They all identified the same vulnerability, his isolation, his dependence on resources he couldn't personally manufacture. In his own universe, he'd had Bulma's genius providing technology, had access to Earth's infrastructure and Dragon Ball resources. Here he possessed only his power and pride. It was simultaneously liberating and limiting. The basilisk bartender verified Zan Helix's death through orbital scans showing the temple's destruction and witness reports of golden light visible from orbit. The 75,000 credits transferred to Vegeta's newly established account, an absurd amount by local standards, barely sufficient for his purposes. You actually did it, the bartender said, four eyes wide with genuine respect. Killed one of the most dangerous beings in the sector, alone, without backup or heavy weapons. You're either the greatest hunter I've ever met or suicidally lucky. Luck is for the weak, Vegeta replied. I'm simply competent. He forwarded 50,000 credits to Score's account with instructions to begin repairs. How long until my shuttle is operational? With this budget, 4 days. Maybe 5 if the part shipment is delayed. The bartender leaned forward conspiratorially. Word of advice, you've made waves. Killing an Inquisitor draws Imperial attention. Refusing Hutt bounties offends criminal organizations. And now beings are talking about the alien warrior who walks through temples and emerges unscathed. Fame is dangerous in the Outer Rim. Let them talk, Vegeta said. Let them come. I welcome challenges that aren't pathetic disappointments. He departed before the bartender could offer more warnings, returning to Ord Mantell, where Score had already begun work on the Imperial shuttle. The Twi'lek mechanic greeted him with a mixture of respect and exasperation. You got the credits? I'm impressed. She gestured to the shuttle's interior, now gutted completely with components scattered across her workspace. But I need to be honest. The shuttle's previous repairs were garbage. Someone sabotaged your power couplings deliberately, introduced microfractures that would cause cascading failures during hyperspace jumps. You're lucky you didn't explode mid-transit. Vegeta absorbed this information with cold clarity. Sabotage, Imperial sabotage. The Emperor keeping his word to make independence costly. More than costly, potentially lethal. Score showed him the fractured couplings under magnification. These are precision damage patterns. Takes skill and deliberate intent. Someone wanted you stranded or dead, preferably both. which means the Emperor is escalating. Vegeta's fist clenched, Kai crackling around his knuckles. Testing whether I'll break before I reach full power adaptation. Calculating whether resource dependency will force submission. So what do you do? Score asked. You can't fight an entire empire alone, and partnerships require compromise you seem allergic to. Vegeta stared at the damaged shuttle, symbol of his predicament, reminder of his vulnerability. In his universe, he'd have simply powered up and destroyed anyone who opposed him. Here, reality's constraints required strategic thinking beyond pure combat. I adapt, he said finally. I complete more bounties, earn sufficient credits to not just repair, but upgrade my vessel. I build independence through accumulation, rather than demand it through force. His expression hardened. And when my strength fully returns, when I can access Super Saiyan transformations without limitation, I'll revisit the Emperor's palace. We'll discuss his manipulations then. That's either a brilliant long-term strategy or elaborate suicide, Score observed. I genuinely can't tell which. Neither can I, Vegeta admitted, but I've discovered something important. This galaxy has principles worth respecting. Beings like that smuggler who chose honor over survival, mechanics like you who work honestly despite surrounding corruption, even warriors like Vader, trapped in service but maintaining discipline. He turned toward the exit. The Emperor views everyone as tools to exploit. I refuse to become another tool, even if refusing costs everything. Score watched him leave and found herself hoping the strange aliens survived his principles. The galaxy had enough beings who compromised themselves into irrelevance. One who maintained integrity despite overwhelming pressure? That was worth preserving. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine reviewed the Fifth Sister's report with interest bordering on fascination. The Saiyan had demonstrated morality, tactical thinking, and principled behavior despite possessing power sufficient to ignore all three. That made him simultaneously more valuable and more dangerous than initial assessment suggested. He won't break easily, Palpatine murmured. Traditional pressures won't work, but every being has a breaking point. We simply must discover his. He smiled beneath his hood. Lord Vader, how attached are you to certain aspects of your past? Vader, standing in attendance, felt ice crystallize in his mechanical heart. My past is irrelevant to Imperial service, my master. Irrelevant? Perhaps, but leverage. Always. Palpatine's eyes gleamed with malevolent intelligence. This Saiyan values principle and honor. Show him what happens to such values under Imperial rule. Show him the cost of defiance through personal demonstration. As you command, Vader said, knowing exactly what the Emperor intended and hating himself for the flicker of anticipation that accompanied the order. The galaxy was shrinking around Vegeta, pressure mounting from every direction. Soon he'd face a choice, bend or break, and neither option promised survival. 4 days became 7. The shuttle repairs revealed additional sabotage, nav computer corruption that would have sent Vegeta into a star, life support systems rigged to fail during vacuum exposure, even the ejection seat mechanisms disabled. Score dismantled every system with increasing fury, muttering Twi'lek curses as each new treachery revealed itself. Whoever did this wanted you dead slowly, she said, showing Vegeta the 17th compromise component. Not just stranded, tortured, each failure designed to drain resources, create desperation, force you into increasingly bad decisions. The Emperor's methodology, Vegeta replied, examining the sabotage with clinical detachment. Frieza used similar tactics. Make servants so desperate they'll accept any terms just to stop suffering. It's effective against beings who fear death more than slavery. And you? I've died before. It's inconvenient but survivable if you know the right people. He saw Score's confused expression and waved dismissively. My universe has methods of resurrection unavailable here. The point is, death doesn't frighten me. Servitude does. While Score worked, Vegeta took additional bounties. Not for credits anymore. The Helix payment covered repairs with surplus, but for information and combat analysis. Each target taught him something about this galaxy's power structures, its factions, its underlying philosophies. He eliminated a Trandoshan slaver who'd been kidnapping colonists for Zagarian auction houses. The fight lasted 8 seconds. The slaver's desperation and cruelty reminded him of Frieza's soldiers, bullies who mistook victims' helplessness for their own strength. He captured a corrupt Imperial moth who'd been embezzling reconstruction funds while Outer Rim world starved. The official begged, offered bribes, promised information about Imperial operations. Vegeta delivered him to rebel contacts the bartender provided, watching the Alliance operative's shocked gratitude with something approaching discomfort. "You're a legend already," one rebel coordinator said, a human woman with intelligence officer bearing, the warrior who refuses Imperial credits, who fights for principle over profit. The rebellion could use— "I'm not joining your rebellion," Vegeta interrupted. "I complete bounties. Sometimes our interests align. Don't mistake pragmatic cooperation for ideological commitment." But the woman smiled knowingly. "Of course not. Just remember, when you're ready to stand against the Empire for real, we'll be here." He departed before the conversation could continue, but her words lingered. The rebellion saw him as potential ally, symbol of resistance against overwhelming power. The Empire saw him as threat to neutralize or asset to control. Neither understood that he simply wanted repairs completed so he could leave this galaxy and return to his own conflicts. Except, did he? The thought emerged unbidden during the 7th night on Ord Mantell. Vegeta sat atop Score's repair facility, watching the spaceport's chaotic traffic and considering his situation objectively. His pod was nearly destroyed. Even if repairs finished, he had no method of returning to his universe. The dimensional rift that brought him here was random catastrophe, not reproducible phenomenon. He was stranded, possibly permanently. And this galaxy, primitive as it was, contained elements his own universe lacked. The Force, mystical energy that granted precognition, telekinesis, and abilities his key couldn't replicate. Technology like hyperdrives and planet-destroying superweapons. Civilizations spanning millions of worlds locked in philosophical conflicts between tyranny and freedom. It was vast, complex, and yes, worthy of a warrior prince's attention. "Stop brooding and come look at this," Score called from below. Vegeta descended to find her standing beside the shuttle, which now gleamed with new components and reinforced systems. "Finished early, used some non-Imperial parts, upgraded your power couplings beyond original specifications, and installed a hyperdrive that'll outrun most pursuit vessels. Consider it professional pride. I don't let sabotage beat me." Vegeta examined the work with grudging approval. The shuttle looked more functional than when he'd stolen it, with additional modifications that suggested Score had invested more effort than payment strictly required. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why what? Why exceed contracted work? You could have done minimal repairs, collected payment, and avoided additional investment. Instead, you've upgraded systems I didn't request. Explain the motivation." Score's headtails twitched. "You refused to deliver that smuggler to slavery. Could have taken easy credits but chose principle. That's rare. Figured I'd return the favor. Do quality work for someone who deserves it." She gestured to the shuttle. "Plus, watching you piss off both the Empire and criminal syndicates while maintaining ethics? That's entertainment worth supporting." "Entertainment?" Vegeta's expression softened fractionally. "In my universe, I have a friend. Brilliant scientist. She provides technology, repairs my equipment, tolerates my presence despite my personality. You remind me of her. Is that a compliment or an insult?" "Both, simultaneously. She'd say the same about me." He accessed his account, transferring an additional 20,000 credits. "For your trouble and discretion." Score stared at the transfer amount. That's 3 times what I quoted. You're overpaying dramatically. Consider it investment. I may need future repairs, and I prefer working with beings who value quality over profit." Vegeta climbed into the shuttle's cockpit, running system diagnostics. Everything registered green, power optimal, hyperdrive calibrated, weapon systems. "You installed military-grade laser cannons?" "Figured you'd need them eventually," Score said with elaborate casualness. "They're technically illegal for civilian vessels, But since you're flying a stolen Imperial shuttle anyway, legality seems negotiable. Vegeta activated the weapon systems, watching targeting computers calibrate. The cannons were primitive compared to his KI blasts, but having ship-based firepower added tactical options. You continue exceeding expectations. It's unusual and mildly concerning. Get used to disappointment. I'm consistently excellent. She handed him a datapad. Also loaded the nav computer with safe hyperspace routes, rebel sympathizer contacts, and locations where Imperial presence is minimal. Places you can lay low if things get heated. You assume I'll need to hide. I assume you'll attract more attention than one being can fight simultaneously. Even you. Score stepped back as the shuttle's repulsors activated. Try not to die immediately after all my work. It'd be embarrassing. I'll endeavor to survive long enough to justify your investment, Vegeta replied dryly. The shuttle lifted smoothly, systems responding better than anything he'd flown in this galaxy. If you encounter difficulties because of our association, contact the basilisk bartender on Nar Shaddaa. He'll know how to reach me. You're offering protection? Didn't think warrior princes did bodyguard work. I'm offering pragmatic reciprocity. You've proven valuable. I protect valuable assets. He paused, then added with uncharacteristic honesty, and you've shown more integrity than most beings I've encountered. That's worth preserving. The shuttle departed before Score could respond, leaving her standing in the bay with a massive credit transfer and the uncomfortable realization that she'd somehow befriended the galaxy's most dangerous outsider. Vegeta set course for open space, intending to test the upgraded systems and finalize plans for what? Returning home seemed impossible. Conquering this galaxy seemed pointless. He'd already proven his superiority to their strongest warriors. Joining either major faction violated his independence. The comm system crackled with an incoming transmission. Imperial frequency, priority alpha encoding. Vegeta almost ignored it, but curiosity won over caution. He accepted the channel. Darth Vader's mask filled the screen. Vegeta, you've been busy. Bounty hunting, making contacts with rebel sympathizers, upgrading your vessel with illegal modifications. Observant. Are you calling to critique my activities or make another recruitment offer? Neither. I'm calling because the Emperor's patience has limits. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence. Your continued independence represents unacceptable disruption to galactic order. You will accept Imperial partnership, or you will be eliminated through methods more direct than sabotage. Direct methods. Vegeta leaned back in his pilot seat. You mean you'll try to kill me yourself? We both know how that ended last time. Last time, I evaluated your capabilities. This time, I employ full Imperial resources, fleet coordination, superior numbers, strategic containment. You may be powerful, but you are one being against millions. Millions of weaklings remain weaklings regardless of quantity, Vegeta countered. But I'm curious, why warn me? If the Emperor wanted me dead, ambush would be more effective than announced assault. Vader was silent for 3 breaths. When he spoke, his tone carried something Vegeta hadn't heard before. Reluctance. Because you spoke truth on Raxus Prime, about chains and masters, about pride masquerading as pragmatism. Another pause. I disagree with your conclusions, but I acknowledge your perspective has merit. Eliminating you without offering final choice would be wasteful. How noble. The loyal attack dog gives his prey one last chance to submit peacefully. Vegeta's voice hardened. I've given my answer already. I don't serve. Not the Emperor, not the rebellion, not anyone except my own judgment. If that requires fighting your entire empire, then prepare your fleets. I've destroyed more for lesser reasons. You cannot win, Vader stated. Even your power has limits. Eventually you'll tire. Mistakes will compound. And the Empire is patient. We don't need victory, we need attrition. Then we understand each other perfectly. You'll commit resources, I'll destroy them. We'll repeat until either I'm dead or your Emperor realizes the cost exceeds the benefit. Vegeta's finger hovered over the comm disconnect. But before we begin this dance, answer one question honestly. Do you want to do this? Or are you following orders because you've forgotten how to choose otherwise? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Vader's breathing filled the channel like metronome, counting down to inevitable violence. "My wants are irrelevant," Vader finally said. "I serve the Empire. That is sufficient purpose." "No, it isn't. But you'll need to discover that yourself." Vegeta terminated the connection and immediately altered course, erasing his flight plan from the nav computer. Vader's warning meant Imperial forces were mobilizing. Being predictable would be fatal. He jumped to hyperspace, destination unknown even to himself, and spent the transit running combat simulations. Fleet battles, multi-vector assaults, sustained engagements against numerical superiority. Every scenario ended the same: victory through overwhelming power, but at cost of complete exhaustion. The Empire's strategy was sound. They didn't need to beat him. They needed to wear him down until one mistake proved fatal. The shuttle dropped from hyperspace near an unmarked moon in a system the nav computer identified as Sanctuary, uninhabited, no Imperial presence, minimal resources, perfect for temporary refuge while planning next moves. He sat down in a valley sheltered by rock formations that would scatter sensor sweeps, powered down to minimal emissions, and stepped outside to properly assess his situation. Stranded in an alien galaxy, hunted by its dominant power structure, refusing to compromise principles despite knowing it would be easier. The parallels to his service under Frieza were uncomfortable and undeniable. Except this time, he was choosing defiance. Consciously, despite consequences. "Kakarot would find this hilarious," Vegeta muttered, speaking to the empty landscape. "The prince of all Saiyans, running and hiding because he refuses to kneel. Where's your pride now, Vegeta?" He clenched his fists, Kai crackling in frustration. "I could kill them all, transform, wipe their fleets from existence. End this farce." But genocide wasn't victory. It was tantrum dressed as conquest. This galaxy had shown him beings worth preserving, smugglers with principles, mechanics with integrity, even rebels fighting for something beyond themselves. Destroying everything to prove a point would make him no better than Frieza. Worse, actually, because unlike Frieza, Vegeta knew better. A ship entered the system, small, fast, civilian registry. Vegeta's hand moved to the shuttle's weapon controls before recognizing the transponder signature. Rebel vessel, transmitting standard non-aggression codes. The ship landed nearby, and the human intelligence officer from Ord Mantell emerged, hands raised in peaceful greeting. "Easy, I come with information, not threats." "How did you find me?" Vegeta demanded. "We've been tracking Imperial fleet movements. They're mobilizing 3-star destroyers and a full Inquisitor complement toward Ord Mantell, where you were last confirmed. We intercepted their communications." She approached cautiously. "You're about to face coordinated Imperial assault, the kind that ends with complete orbital bombardment if direct engagement fails. Let them come. I've survived worse." "Have you survived sustained assault from orbit? Multiple capital ships firing simultaneously? Because that's what's coming. The Emperor isn't playing anymore. He's committed to your elimination if you won't serve." She pulled out a data pad showing fleet positions. 3-star destroyers, 12 support frigates, estimated 4,000 starfighters, and rumors suggest Vader himself is commanding the operation. Vegeta studied the tactical display with growing anger. "Overwhelming force, standard Imperial doctrine, and you're telling me this because the enemy of our enemy makes a useful ally, and because you've demonstrated values the rebellion respects." She met his eyes directly. "We're offering support, not recruitment, support. Intelligence on Imperial movements, safe harbor in rebel-controlled space, medical supplies if you're injured. We don't expect you to join our cause. We just don't want to watch you die fighting it." "I don't need protection from primitives with delusions of strategic competence," Vegeta said coldly. "No, you need information about an enemy you don't fully understand. Tactical data about weapon systems and command structures. The kind of intelligence that means the difference between victory and death." She placed the data pad on the shuttle's hull. "Take it or leave it. But the rebellion doesn't abandon beings who fight tyranny, even stubborn ones who insist they're fighting alone." She returned to her ship and departed before Vegeta could respond, leaving him with the datapad and unwelcome realization that pride was becoming liability. He'd spent days refusing assistance, insisting on independence, maintaining principles that looked increasingly like suicide with better publicity. He examined the datapad, fleet compositions, commander profiles, inquisitor capabilities, detailed analysis of Star Destroyer weakness points and optimal attack vectors. This wasn't just intelligence. This was tactical support from beings who understood they couldn't control him, but offered help anyway. It was respect, genuine respect for his choices and acknowledgement of his agency. Vegeta hadn't experienced that since Bulma stopped trying to order him around and started trusting his judgment. The comm system activated again, another Imperial frequency, but this one carried Palpatine's personal encryption. Vegeta accepted it with resignation. The Emperor's withered face filled the screen, eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. Prince Vegeta, have you reconsidered my offer? Partnership with the Empire grants protection from the very forces I'm about to unleash. You're offering to save me from yourself. How generous. I'm offering choice. Accept partnership, and this ends peacefully. Continue your stubborn independence and discover that power alone cannot overcome organized opposition. Palpatine leaned forward. I respect your strength, Prince. But strength without support structure is merely temporary survival. The galaxy will grind you down eventually. Better to stand with the winning side than die with fools who call themselves rebels. I've stood with winning sides before, Vegeta replied. Served masters who promised power and delivered chains. I learned that lesson in blood, humiliation, and eventual rebellion. You're offering identical terms with different vocabulary. Am I? The Emperor's smile was ancient malevolence. Or am I offering what you truly desire? Recognition, purpose, challenges worthy of your abilities. The rebellion offers you nothing but eventual death, fighting for beings who can't defend themselves? I offer you empire, conquest, everything a warrior prince should command. For one dangerous moment, Vegeta felt temptation's pull. The Emperor understood him frighteningly well, identified every desire, every ambition, every dream of recognition and supremacy that had driven him since childhood. Partnership with the Empire would grant resources, purpose, even respect. All it would cost was everything he'd fought to become since breaking Frieza's chains. I've conquered galaxies, Vegeta said quietly, destroyed civilizations, ruled through fear and overwhelming force. And you know what I learned? That kind of power is hollow, meaningless. It proves nothing except that you're strong enough to destroy beings who can't fight back. His eyes hardened. I want more than that now. I want challenges, equals, battles that matter rather than massacres dressed as conquest. Your empire offers none of those things. Palpatine's expression shifted, surprise flickering across ancient features, before cold calculation reasserted control. You've grown since arriving in our galaxy. Interesting, unexpected, but ultimately irrelevant. Philosophical enlightenment won't stop turbo-laser bombardment. Moral superiority won't deflect concentrated imperial assault. His voice dropped to whisper that somehow carried absolute menace. Last chance, Prince Vegeta. Serve or die. Choose now. I choose neither. I choose to fight, to resist, to demonstrate that your empire, like Frieza's before it, is built on foundations that crumble when someone truly strong refuses to kneel. Vegeta's Kai began manifesting visibly. Send your fleets, deploy your inquisitors, bring Vader himself if you dare. I am Vegeta, Prince of all Scions, and I bow to no one. He terminated the connection before Palpatine could respond and immediately began plotting hyperspace coordinates. The valley was compromised now. Empire would triangulate his position from the transmission. He needed movement, unpredictability, tactical advantages that negated numerical superiority. The Rebel data pad contained location of forward operating base in the Atalan system. Remote, defensible, with Rebel fleet support if needed. Vegeta's first instinct was to reject the option, maintain independence, face the Empire alone as pride demanded. Then he remembered the smuggler who'd chosen principles over survival. Score who'd exceeded contracted work out of respect. Even Vader, trapped in service but maintaining discipline despite chains. Strength alone wasn't enough. Connection, principle, choosing when to fight and when to accept support. Those were real power, the kind Frieza never possessed because he couldn't imagine needing anyone. Vegeta set course for Attilan, knowing the decision would appear as weakness, as compromise, as everything his pride had trained him to reject. But he'd learned something important in this galaxy. Sometimes the strongest choice was admitting you couldn't win every battle through sheer force. Sometimes being smart mattered more than being strongest. And if he was going to fight an empire, he'd do it with every advantage available, even if those advantages came from allies he'd never formally acknowledged. The shuttle jumped to hyperspace, racing ahead of Imperial pursuit, carrying a warrior prince toward decisions that would define whether he remained the conqueror he'd been or became the leader he might still become. Behind him, 3-star destroyers and dozens of support vessels mobilized for the largest manhunt the Empire had conducted since the Jedi Purge. And on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine smiled with satisfaction that bordered on ecstasy. The Saiyan had chosen resistance over submission, exactly as predicted. Now the real manipulation could begin, because beings who fought heroically against overwhelming odds became symbols. Symbols could be martyred, and martyrs served the Empire far better than living rebels ever could. Either Vegeta would break and submit, or he'd die heroically and prove that resistance against the Empire was glorious suicide. Both outcomes eliminated the threat while reinforcing Imperial dominance. The Emperor had been playing this game for decades. One alien warrior, however powerful, couldn't possibly understand the depths of manipulation he'd already fallen into, or so Palpatine believed. Attilan existed in Imperial databases as uninhabited desert world, strategic value negligible. The assessment was deliberately inaccurate. Beneath the planet's crimson surface, hidden by sandstone mesas and atmospheric interference, the Rebel Alliance maintained one of its largest forward operating bases, starfighter squadrons, capital ship berths, intelligence operations, and training facilities for operatives too valuable to risk at more exposed locations. Vegeta's shuttle descended through a sensor-scrambling ion storm that the rebels had somehow weaponized into defensive perimeter, guided by transponder codes the intelligence officer had provided. The base materialized from the landscape like a mirage resolving into reality. Landing platforms carved into cliff faces, weapons emplacements disguised as rock formations, and dozens of ships bearing the rebellion's Phoenix Squadron insignia. He sat down on a designated platform where a greeting party waited, with the nervous tension of beings who'd heard legends but never faced the source. The intelligence officer from Ord Mantell stood at the group's center, flanked by a Lasat warrior whose size rivaled some of the larger species Vegeta had encountered, a Mandalorian in battle-worn armor, and a young human male whose force presence registered as barely trained but unmistakably present. "Welcome to Attilan Base," the officer said formally. "I'm Captain Harrison Dulla, Phoenix Squadron Leader. This is Zeb Aurelios, Sabine Wren, and Ezra Bridger. We're the beings who've been tracking my movements and feeding me intelligence," Vegeta interrupted, stepping off the shuttle. "I know. You've been competent, unusual for resistance movements." Zeb bristled at the casual dismissal. "Competent? We've been fighting the Empire since before you crashed in this galaxy, mate. Show some respect. I respect results, not tenure. You've survived, which demonstrates tactical capability. Whether you can actually win remains uncertain." Vegeta surveyed the base with critical eyes. "Your position is defensible but isolated. Supply lines must be stretched. Personnel numbers insufficient for sustained operations. You're playing guerrilla warfare because you lack strength for direct confrontation." "We lack your power," Hera corrected calmly. "But we have something you're currently missing: a support network, allies, and strategic intelligence. The Empire mobilized 3-star destroyers to hunt you. You came here. That suggests you understand the value of tactical position over pure strength." "I came here because fighting alone would be inefficient, not because I need protection," Vegeta said coldly. "Don't mistake pragmatic cooperation for ideological alignment. I'm not joining your rebellion." "Wouldn't dream of asking," Sabine said, her Mandalorian helmet tilting in what might have been amusement. "We've heard about your 'I don't serve anyone' speeches. Very dramatic, but if you're going to use our base as staging ground for whatever you're planning, we need to establish ground rules." I don't follow rules I didn't create. Then you don't use our facilities. Hera's tone remained professional but carried underlying steel. This base houses 300 personnel who've risked everything fighting Imperial tyranny. I won't endanger them because you're too proud to accept basic operational security protocols. They locked eyes, Rebel Captain and Saiyan Prince, neither willing to yield immediately. Vegeta felt familiar irritation at being questioned, the reflexive arrogance that had defined his personality for decades. But he also recognized the situation's reality. He needed their base, their intelligence, their tactical support. And Hera was correct. Endangering beings who'd shown him respect would be dishonorable. State your protocols, he said finally. I'll evaluate their reasonableness. No unauthorized weapon discharges inside the base. No assaulting personnel regardless of provocation. Share intelligence about Imperial movements. And if conflict reaches a Talon, you help defend it. Hera's expression softened slightly. That's it. We're not demanding loyalty oaths or strategic subservience. Just basic cooperation. Acceptable. Vegeta paused, then added with grudging honesty. And logical. I've destroyed bases through recklessness before. It's inefficient. Ezra, who'd been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke. I can't sense you in the Force at all. It's like there's a void where you're standing. How is that possible? The Force is this galaxy's mystical energy field. I operate under different universal laws, KI manipulation, Saiyan physiology, power systems your Force doesn't recognize. Vegeta studied the young Force sensitive with analytical interest. You're barely trained, recently discovered your abilities. Clumsy but potentially powerful. Ezra's my Padawan, a new voice stated. A Togruta female emerged from the command center, orange skin marked with white patterns, montrals extending from her head in distinctive formation, presence radiating Force mastery that dwarfed the boy's clumsy attempts. Former Jedi, current rebel operative, and very curious about a being who exists outside the Force's reach. Ahsoka Tano, Vegeta said, recognizing her from Imperial databases he'd accessed. Anakin Skywalker's apprentice before he became Vader, survivor of the Jedi Purge. The Empire considers you significant threat. The Empire considers anyone who survived Order 66 a threat. Ahsoka approached with lightsabers visible but unignited at her belt. You fought Vader. Reports say you caught his lightsaber with your fingers. I need to understand how that's possible. Physics, energy manipulation, focused ki creating barriers stronger than magnetic plasma containment. Vegeta demonstrated by materializing a small chi sphere in his palm. Your lightsabers are impressive technology, but limited by fundamental design. Against opponents who understand energy manipulation at deeper levels, they're just sophisticated cutting tools. Ahsoka studied the Ki sphere with fascination that bordered on academic obsession. That's not the Force. It's something else entirely. Personal energy channeled through conscious will rather than connection to universal field. Can it be taught? To Saiyans, yes. To your species, Vegeta dismissed the sphere. Unknown. Humans in my universe can learn basic ki control, but it requires decades of training and most lack sufficient aptitude. Your physiology might not support the necessary energy pathways. But it's possible. Theoretically, Vegeta's expression hardened. But I'm not here to train students. I'm here to avoid Imperial fleet bombardment while planning my next move. Which is, Hera asked. Unclear. The Empire wants me dead or subservient. I refuse both options. Prolonged conflict serves no strategic purpose beyond proving points neither side needs proven. He crossed his arms, scowling at the admission. I'm reconsidering my approach. You mean you're realizing that fighting alone against an entire empire might be poor strategy? Zeb grinned, showing impressive teeth. About time. I mean, I'm acknowledging that pure power doesn't solve every problem, Vegeta corrected sharply. In my universe, most conflicts resolve through superior force. Here the force itself adds complication, mystical abilities that bypass conventional power scaling. And your empire understands that individual strength, however overwhelming, can be countered through coordinated opposition. Welcome to strategic thinking, Sabine said. Most warriors discover that before getting 3-star destroyers assigned to kill them, but better late than never. Before Vegeta could respond with the cutting remark forming on his lips, proximity alarms shrieked across the base. Hera's comlink crackled with urgent transmission. Captain, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Imperial fleet incoming, 3-star destroyers and escort vessels. ETA 4 minutes. They found us. Hera's voice remained steady despite the implications. All personnel to battle stations. Launch all available fighters. Activate defensive shields. They triangulated my transmission to the Emperor, Vegeta realized with cold fury. Used my location to identify your base. I've compromised your position. Regrets later, defense now. Ahsoka ignited her white lightsabers, purified kyber crystals, symbolic of her independence from both Jedi and Sith. Can you fight capital ships? I've destroyed planets. Ships are simpler. Vegeta's ki aura flared to life, white gold energy crackling around him. But your personnel need evacuation. They can't survive sustained orbital bombardment. We don't evacuate. Hera was already moving toward her A-Wing starfighter. We fight. This base represents months of preparation and strategic positioning. Abandoning it surrenders entire sector control to the Empire. Then you'll die defending infrastructure that can be rebuilt, Vegeta said flatly. Tactically idiotic. Maybe, but it's our choice. Hera climbed into her cockpit, systems activating with military precision. You can help defend or leave, but don't tell us our sacrifice is meaningless. Every stand against the Empire matters, even the ones we lose. The words struck deeper than Vegeta expected. Every stand matters, even the losing ones. It was philosophy he'd rejected for decades. The idea that fighting for principle, despite certain defeat, held value beyond victory or survival. Goku's philosophy, the one that had allowed the third-class Scion to repeatedly surpass him through sheer determination and moral conviction. 3-star destroyers dropped from hyperspace, massive triangular silhouettes blotting out Atalan's sun. The Executor, Vader's personal flagship, led the formation, over 15 kilometers of Imperial might bristling with thousands of turbolaser batteries. Escort frigates spread in defensive picket, while TIE fighter squadrons launched like swarms of mechanical insects. The Empire hadn't come to capture. They'd come to annihilate. All fighters, engage enemy screen. Hera's voice carried across squadron frequencies. Target the frigates' shield generators. Buy time for base evacuation whether our stubborn guest approves or not. A-Wings and X-Wings screamed into atmosphere. 24 starfighters against hundreds of TIE fighters and capital ship support. Mathematically, it was suicide. Strategically, it was necessity. Morally, Vegeta was beginning to understand. It was everything these rebels believed made life worth living. Damn it, he muttered, then rocketed into the sky faster than any starfighter, leaving sonic booms cascading across the base. He covered the distance to the nearest Star Destroyer in under 20 seconds, his ki aura protecting him from vacuum and atmospheric friction. The ship's point defense weapons tracked his approach, automated targeting systems compensating for his impossible speed, and opened fire with hundreds of laser cannons simultaneously. Vegeta flew through the barrage like meteor through rain. Energy bolts that would vaporize starfighters splashed against his Kai barrier and dissipated. He reached the Star Destroyer's bridge tower and struck it with a focused Kai blast. Not his full power, not even close, but sufficient to collapse the structure and vent the bridge to vacuum. The massive vessel lurched, losing command coordination, weapons fire becoming sporadic as secondary control centers struggled to compensate. Impossible! Captain Nevik screamed from the Intimidator's bridge, watching his sister ship's command structure explode. One being just crippled a Star Destroyer. All weapons, target that. Vegeta appeared outside the Intimidator's viewport, hovering in vacuum with arms crossed, an expression promising escalation. He raised one hand and fired a Gallic gun, concentrated Kai beam that struck the ship's main reactor shielding and burned through 3 decks before Vegeta intentionally terminated the attack. Warning shot. Message received. I can destroy you all. Choose differently. On the Executor, Darth Vader stood on the bridge and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Tactical uncertainty. The Saiyan wasn't just fighting. He was demonstrating overwhelming superiority while deliberately restraining lethal force. One being was making the Empire's most powerful fleet look incompetent. Continue bombardment, Vader commanded. All fighters, engage the rebel starfighters. The alien is one target. Eliminate the rebellion's operational capacity first. The Star Destroyers adjusted targeting, shifting from Vegeta to a Talon surface. Turbo laser batteries aligned for planetary bombardment. The same tactic that had reduced countless worlds to slag. The Empire's answer to resistance that couldn't be negotiated. No! Vegeta felt rage crystallize into absolute certainty. They were going to kill everyone. Hundreds of rebel personnel, beings who'd shown him respect and offered support without demanding servitude. Because the Empire couldn't control him, they'd murder anyone who aided him. Just like Frieza. Exactly like Frieza. His power spiked. Not to full Super Saiyan, he wasn't certain this universe could handle that yet, but to the threshold just below transformation. His aura intensified from white gold to brilliant gold. Energy output making every ship's sensors scream overload warnings. He moved, faster than targeting computers could track. Vegeta positioned himself between the Star Destroyers and a Talon surface. 3 massive warships prepared to fire simultaneously, enough destructive power to sterilize the planet's surface. And one Saiyan prince decided that sometimes the strongest choice was protecting beings who couldn't protect themselves. The turbo laser barrage launched, thousands of energy bolts converging on a Talon in apocalyptic firestorm. Vegeta's Ki barrier expanded to planetary scale. The bombardment struck his energy field and stopped. Not weakened, stopped completely, as if hitting a wall that existed between reality's layers. Energy sufficient to destroy continents dissipated against one being's refusal to allow innocent death. Impossible, Vader whispered, watching displays that defied everything he understood about power limitations. He's shielding the entire base, Ahsoka said from her starfighter, awe and disbelief mixing in equal measure. One being is blocking 3 Star Destroyers' full firepower. How is that possible? Because he's not bound by the Force's limitations, Ezra realized. He operates under different rules entirely. Vegeta held the barrier, feeling the strain even as his adapting physiology grew stronger under pressure. This universe's physics still resisted his power, made every technique cost more energy than it should. But Saiyan cells were designed for exactly this. Growing stronger under stress, adapting to whatever opposed them, turning limits into launching points. He could feel it happening, his power stabilizing, adapting, reaching the levels he'd possessed in his own universe before the dimensional rift. The Empire had made a critical error. They'd pushed him hard enough that his Saiyan biology compensated. They'd made him stronger. Cease bombardment, Vader commanded. Deploy Inquisitors. If direct assault fails, we eliminate him through sustained combat and force techniques. 4 Inquisitors launched from the Executor, 10th brother, 5th sister, 7th sister, and 1 Vegeta hadn't encountered. The Grand Inquisitor, tall and imposing in black armor, wielding a double-bladed saber that spun with intimidating precision. They approached Vegeta's position with coordinated formation, suggesting extensive training together. 4 Force users, each capable of killing Jedi Masters, moving as unified strike team. Surrender, the Grand Inquisitor commanded. You cannot maintain that barrier indefinitely. Eventually, you'll tire. And when you do, we'll be waiting. You're correct, Vegeta admitted, lowering the barrier now that bombardment had ceased. I can't maintain planetary shields forever. Fortunately, I don't need to. His smile was predatory satisfaction. I just needed pressure sufficient to complete my adaptation to this universe's physics. Thank you for providing it. His power surged again, this time without resistance. The universe's laws had stopped fighting him. His ki flowed freely, fully, exactly as it had in his home reality. He was back to full capacity, and these Inquisitors were about to discover what that meant. Final offer, Vegeta said calmly. Retreat. Report to your Emperor that continuing this assault will cost him more ships than I'm worth. Or stay, and learn exactly why Frieza's empire fell when someone truly strong refused to kneel. The Grand Inquisitor ignited his lightsaber. We are the Empire's finest force wielders. Your power is impressive but finite. 4 against 1, even you will. Vegeta moved. One instant floating in vacuum, the next behind the 10th brother. Single palm strike, precise application of force sufficient to overload the Inquisitor's armor systems and render him unconscious without killing. The other three spun, sabers raised, but Vegeta was already gone. Appeared beside the seventh sister, disarmed her with casual efficiency, and knocked her into the fifth sister hard enough to send both careening toward the nearest frigate. The Grand Inquisitor had time to realize his error before Vegeta's fist connected with his chest plate. Not full force, not even close, but sufficient to crack the armor and send him spinning toward the Executor's hangar bay at terminal velocity. 15 seconds. 4 Inquisitors defeated without lethal force, barely exerting himself. On the Executor's bridge, Vader watched tactical displays and knew with absolute certainty that conventional assault had failed. The Saiyan operated at full capacity now, unhindered by universal adaptation issues. Continuing the attack would only result in destroyed ships and dead personnel. He opened a channel to Vegeta's position. You've made your point. Withdraw your forces, and we'll discuss terms. Terms? Vegeta's voice carried across the channel with cold amusement. You attacked a rebel base because I was present, attempted to murder hundreds because you couldn't control me. And now you want to negotiate? The alternative is mutually destructive escalation, Vader stated. You can destroy our ships. We can eventually wear you down through attrition. Both outcomes serve no strategic purpose. Except one, proving that your empire, like all tyrannies built on fear and overwhelming force, crumbles when faced with someone who refuses to be intimidated. Vegeta's power spiked again, golden aura visible even from the Star Destroyer's bridges. I could destroy your entire fleet right now. 3 Star Destroyers, all escort vessels, every fighter. I have the power. You know I do. Then why don't you? Vader asked quietly. Because unlike your empire, I don't murder beings who've surrendered. You've stopped attacking. Your forces are withdrawing. Vegeta gestured to the TIE fighters already retreating to their carriers. Killing you now would be execution, not combat. And contrary to your Emperor's assumptions, I possess enough honor to know the difference. The channel fell silent. Vader processed the statement and its implications. The being had demonstrated power sufficient to annihilate them, then chosen restraint for purely moral reasons. It was the opposite of everything Sith philosophy taught, everything the Empire represented. It was what Anakin Skywalker might have done. Before Mustafar, before the mask, before 2 decades of service that had burned away everything except obedience and duty. We're withdrawing, Vader said finally. Report to the Emperor that the Saiyan's threat level requires reassessment. Continuing assault risks losses that exceed strategic value. Lord Vader, the Emperor specifically ordered, Captain Nevik began. I am altering the mission parameters. We withdraw. Now. The Star Destroyers began pulling back, escort vessels forming defensive screen as the massive warships prepared for hyperspace jump. Before they vanished, Vader opened a private channel, encryption so sophisticated only he and Vegeta would hear. You spoke of chains and masters, of pride masquerading as pragmatism. The Dark Lord's mechanical breathing filled the silence. I dismissed your words as philosophy from one who'd never ruled, never commanded, never understood the necessity of order through strength. And now, Vegeta asked, now I wonder if the chains I polish so carefully are necessity or habit. If the master I serve commands through strength or simply through my unwillingness to question orders I followed for 20 years. Another pause. You've given me much to contemplate, Prince Vegeta. I suspect we'll meet again. Under different circumstances. The channel closed. The Imperial fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving a Talon system as abruptly as they'd arrived. Vegeta descended to the base, where rebel personnel were already emerging from shelters, staring at the sky where 3 Star Destroyers had been moments before. Hera approached first, her expression mixing relief, awe, and calculation. You just made the Empire's entire task force retreat, she said. Alone, without killing anyone. I've never seen anything like it. I made a point. Whether they comprehend it remains uncertain. Vegeta looked at the assembled rebels, mechanics, pilots, soldiers, all watching him with something approaching reverence. It made him uncomfortable. Your base is compromised. The Empire knows this location. You need to evacuate regardless of my presence. Already planning it, Hera confirmed. But we have time now. Time you bought us. Lives you saved through... She paused, searching for words. Through choosing to protect beings you barely know for reasons that had nothing to do with self-interest. Don't romanticize necessity. They would have killed you to hurt me. I couldn't allow that. Vegeta's scowl deepened. It's inefficient, wasteful, strategic idiocy that offends my tactical sensibilities. Sure, tactical sensibilities. That's definitely why you risked everything protecting strangers. Sabine's tone suggested she understood exactly what had motivated him, and Vegeta's discomfort with that understanding. You keep insisting you're not a hero. Keeps getting harder to believe. I'm not a hero, Vegeta said firmly. I'm a warrior who refuses to enable tyranny. There's a difference. Is there? Ahsoka asked quietly. Because from where we're standing, you just demonstrated everything the rebellion fights for. Protecting the weak, resisting overwhelming oppression, choosing principle over expedience. That's the definition of heroism, Vegeta wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that he'd acted from pride, from tactical necessity, from anything except the moral conviction they were attributing to him. But the words wouldn't come because somewhere during this galaxy's chaos, he'd stopped fighting solely for himself. He'd started fighting for something that mattered. The Empire will return, he said instead. Stronger, better prepared. You need to be gone before that happens. Agreed, but we have time now. Time to plan, to coordinate, to maybe, if you're willing, discuss what comes next. Hera extended her hand in formal greeting. Thank you, Vegeta, for everything you've done, whether you admit to heroism or not. He stared at the offered hand for 3 heartbeats, then accepted it. Not submission, not servitude, just acknowledgement between warriors who'd fought together and survived. What comes next, Vegeta said slowly, is that I stop running from the Empire and start making them understand why hunting me is an expensive mistake. And apparently, despite my better judgment, I'll need allies for that. Hera smiled. Welcome to the rebellion, even if you refuse to call it that. I'm not, Vegeta began. Of course not, Ahsoka interrupted, grinning. You're just a warrior who happens to fight the Empire alongside rebels while protecting rebel bases and accepting rebel intelligence. Completely coincidental alliance. Vegeta scowled but couldn't formulate adequate counter-argument. Somehow, without intending to, without consciously choosing, he'd been drawn into exactly the conflict he'd sworn to avoid. And the truly disturbing part? He didn't entirely hate it. Vegeta descended through Coruscant's sky like a golden comet, atmospheric friction creating a plasma trail visible across 3 continents. Millions of beings looked up from their daily routines to witness something impossible. A single individual falling toward the Imperial Palace with speed that suggested purpose rather than accident. Within moments, every holonet channel carried footage of the mysterious figure whose energy signature defied sensor analysis. The palace's defensive systems activated automatically, anti-air turbo lasers tracking his trajectory, shield generators powering to maximum, automated protocols designed to eliminate aerial threats engaging with mechanical precision. Energy bolts lanced toward Vegeta from 100 hidden emplacements, each shot carrying enough power to vaporize a starfighter. He didn't dodge. His Ki barrier absorbed the barrage, converting kinetic and thermal energy into harmless dispersion. The palace's shields, rated to withstand capital ship bombardment, materialized as a shimmering dome of blue energy between him and his destination. Vegeta struck the shield with his fist at full speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a proton torpedo detonation. The shield buckled, generators screaming overload warnings as power consumption spiked beyond design tolerances. For 3 seconds, the barrier held through sheer engineering excellence and redundant systems. Then Vegeta's ki intensified, golden aura blazing brighter, and the shield shattered like glass struck by a hammer. He crashed through the throne room's reinforced ceiling in an explosion of duracrete and twisted metal, landing in a crater of his own making, with arms crossed and expression promising violence. Dust settled around him as the chamber's occupants processed what had just occurred. The throne room was exactly as intelligence reports described. Vast chamber of black stone and crimson banners designed to intimidate through architectural oppression and shadow. At its far end, elevated on steps that forced supplicants to look up in literal submission, sat the emperor's throne. Palpatine occupied that throne with posture suggesting he'd anticipated this entrance precisely. His hood was lowered, revealing his withered features and yellow eyes burning with dark side corruption. To his right stood Darth Vader, lightsaber ignited and ready. To his left, the royal guard, 50 warriors in crimson armor wielding force pikes, trained since childhood to die protecting their emperor. Dramatic entrance, Palpatine observed, his voice carrying casual amusement despite the palace's alarms shrieking throughout adjacent corridors. You could have used the door. I left instructions with security to admit you. Doors imply requesting permission to enter, Vegeta replied, stepping out of the crater. I don't request, I take. How very Sith of you. Perhaps you're more aligned with our philosophy than you acknowledge. The Emperor gestured, and the royal guards shifted into defensive formation. But before we continue this confrontation, I'm curious. What do you hope to achieve? You cannot kill me. My mastery of the Force exceeds anything you've encountered. You cannot intimidate me. I've orchestrated the fall of republics and rise of empires. So what precisely is your strategy? Simple. Vegeta's ki began manifesting visibly, white gold energy crackling around his frame. I beat you. Demonstrate that your Force mastery means nothing against someone from outside your framework. Then I make you release everyone you've imprisoned for helping me. After that, he smiled coldly, I leave, let you survive with the knowledge that the Emperor himself couldn't force one Saiyan prince to kneel. Leaving me alive to rebuild and retaliate? Poor tactics. Killing you makes me murderer indistinguishable from tyrants I claim to oppose. Defeating you and choosing mercy demonstrates strength your philosophy can't comprehend. Power restrained by principle rather than necessity. Vegeta's stance shifted to combat ready. Besides, executing defenseless opponents offends my warrior pride. You'll get fair chance to defend yourself. Palpatine's laugh was ancient corruption given voice. Fair chance. Fascinating. You genuinely believe this confrontation will be combat between equals. He stood slowly from his throne, dark side energy radiating from his withered frame like heat from a star. Allow me to educate you about power you cannot begin to comprehend. The Emperor raised both hands and force lightning erupted. Not the controlled streams Vader had demonstrated, but torrents of blue-white energy that filled the entire throne room. Electricity that could reduce entire corridors to ash, sustained indefinitely through dark side mastery that had consumed thousands of Force sensitives over decades. Vegeta's Kai barrier absorbed the lightning, his energy field converting the Force attack into harmless dissipation. But something felt different this time. The electricity carried malevolence beyond simple energy. It sought weakness, probed defenses, carried consciousness that tried to infiltrate his mind. Impressive shielding, Palpatine observed, maintaining the assault without visible strain. But you defend only your body. Your mind remains vulnerable to those who've mastered telepathic domination through the Force. Vegeta felt it then. Pressure against his consciousness. Foreign presence attempting to access his thoughts, his memories, his will itself. The same technique Babidi had used, refined through centuries of Sith knowledge. It was sophisticated, subtle, designed to make victims believe their compromised thoughts were their own. Against a being unfamiliar with mental manipulation, it would be irresistible. Against a Saiyan who'd broken free from Babidi's control through sheer willpower, it was insult. Get out of my head! Vegeta's power exploded outward. Ki surged so intense it shattered every window in the throne room and sent royal guards staggering. The mental intrusion disintegrated against his fury-reinforced will, consciousness too volatile to control through subtle manipulation. Palpatine's expression shifted, surprise registering for the first time since Vegeta's arrival. Remarkable. You expelled Force domination through emotional intensity alone. Most beings require years of training to develop such mental fortitude. Most beings aren't Saiyan. Vegeta advanced across the throne room, each step cracking the polished stone floor. And I've had practice resisting mind control from entities more sophisticated than a withered politician playing with mystical powers. Lord Vader, Palpatine commanded, engage him. Test his limits while I prepare more comprehensive measures. Vader moved with force-enhanced speed, lightsaber arcing toward Vegeta in a gem-so power strike designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer momentum. The plasma blade struck Vegeta's raised forearm, not the Kai barrier this time, but actual flesh-meeting superheated plasma. The lightsaber stopped cold. Vegeta had consciously lowered his energy shield, allowing direct contact between his cyan-reinforced tissue and the weapon. The lightsaber's plasma burned his skin, caused damage his regeneration immediately repaired, but failed to sever the limb or even slow his movement. Impossible, Vader breathed. Organic tissue cannot withstand direct lightsaber contact. Cyan tissue, reinforced through decades of training in environments that would atomize your body, adapted through battles against beings who could crack planets, that tissue has different tolerances than your weak species. Vegeta grabbed the lightsaber blade with his hand, Kai coating his palm in protective layer, thin enough to feel the weapon's heat, but dense enough to prevent damage. He yanked the weapon from Vader's grip and crushed the hilt with casual force, sending kyber crystal fragments skittering across the floor. Your signature weapon, destroyed. Vegeta released the ruined lightsaber. Your force abilities, ineffective. Your master's manipulation, resisted. What's your next strategy, Vader? Or do you finally acknowledge that your empire's power has limits? Vader stood motionless, decades of certainty crumbling. Everything the dark side had promised, unlimited power, dominance over lesser beings, strength that made him invincible, all of it proved insufficient against one warrior who existed outside the Force's framework entirely. I have no answer, Vader admitted quietly. Then stand aside. This confrontation is between your master and me. Vegeta turned back toward Palpatine, who'd been observing with calculating interest. Your apprentice has wisdom enough to recognize when he's outmatched. Do you? Wisdom? Palpatine's smile widened impossibly. I have something far more valuable, experience. You've demonstrated impressive power, Prince Vegeta. Strength that exceeds individual Force users, perhaps even small groups. But you've yet to face the dark side's true manifestation. Power accumulated over lifetimes, knowledge extracted from thousand-year-old holocrons, techniques refined through centuries of Sith mastery. His eyes blazed with yellow intensity. Let me show you what unlimited power truly means. The Emperor's presence in the Force expanded catastrophically. Every being on Coruscant sensitive to mystical energy felt it. Crushing weight of malevolence so concentrated it made reality itself feel thin. The throne room's temperature dropped 20 degrees as Palpatine channeled dark side energy with mastery that transcended individual technique. He didn't attack with lightning, didn't attempt telekinesis or mental domination. Instead, he reached into the fundamental nature of the Force itself and twisted. Vegeta felt gravity intensify around him. Not mechanical gravity from generators, but reality being manipulated at quantum level. His body, which routinely trained under 400 times Earth's gravity, suddenly felt the pressure of collapsing star. His ki reinforcement held, but maintaining it required concentration that prevented offensive action. The Force binds all things, Palpatine said, his voice carrying across the crushing pressure. Space, time, matter, energy, all bend to its supreme master's will. You exist outside the Force's touch, true, but you occupy space that doesn't. And space, the pressure intensified further, reality itself compressing around Vegeta's position. Space obeys me absolutely. Vegeta sank to one knee, teeth clenched against pressure that should have compressed him to atomic density. His ki flared brighter, golden aura pushing back against reality manipulation that treated physical laws as suggestions rather than absolutes. Impressive resistance, Palpatine observed clinically. Most beings would be crushed to paste by now. You maintain consciousness and even partial mobility. Fascinating. But ultimately, the pressure increased again. Insufficient. For 3 heartbeats, Vegeta struggled against the force technique that weaponized reality itself. His Saiyan physiology screamed protest. Cells compressed beyond tolerances, even his adaptive biology could compensate for instantly. The Emperor had found a vulnerability. He could resist force attacks against his person, but attacks against the space he occupied proved more problematic. Then Vegeta remembered something Cell had taught him. The bioandroid had been able to regenerate from near-total destruction because his consciousness wasn't limited to his physical form. His Kai could sustain him even when his body failed. Vegeta's aura exploded outward with intensity that made the throne room's remaining structure groan. Not just defensive barrier now, but ki extending beyond his physical form, creating bubble of personal reality that his will controlled absolutely. Within that bubble, gravity obeyed his determination, not Palpatine's manipulation. He stood slowly, golden energy blazing bright enough to cast shadows against the Emperor's dark side manifestation. Creative application, Palpatine admitted, using your exotic energy to create localized reality that resists force manipulation. Clever adaptation, but how long can you maintain it? How much energy reserves do you possess? Because his smile was ancient triumph. I can draw upon the dark side indefinitely. Then this becomes endurance match. Vegeta's breathing remained steady despite the strain. Your infinite dark side power against my Saiyan physiology that grows stronger under pressure. Let's discover which limitation breaks first. They held that stalemate for 17 seconds. Emperor channeling reality warping force technique. Saiyan maintaining ki bubble that resisted manipulation through sheer willpower. The throne room became battlefield of competing physics, space itself distorting where their opposed powers met. Then Vegeta felt it, the familiar sensation of Zenkai boost activating. His body, pushed to its limits by the Emperor's assault, began adapting, cells reinforcing themselves. In energy pathways expanding, his entire physiology evolving to handle stress that should have killed him. He was getting stronger. Mid-battle, while defending. Impossible, Palpatine whispered, sensing the shift through the Force. Your power level is increasing. During combat, that's not beings don't. For the first time, genuine uncertainty crossed his ancient features. Saiyans do, Vegeta replied, his aura intensifying as his body adapted. Every time we face death and survive, we become stronger. Every limit pushed becomes new baseline. You're not fighting standard opponent who weakens under assault. You're fighting warrior race designed to evolve during battle itself. He advanced against the crushing pressure, each step requiring tremendous effort, but simultaneously making the next step easier as his body adapted. Palpatine increased the force manipulation desperately, throwing everything he'd accumulated over decades into the technique. It wasn't enough. Vegeta reached the Emperor's position, standing before the throne with golden aura blazing against dark side corruption. You've demonstrated your power. It's impressive, sophisticated, dangerous to beings who operate under your reality's standard rules. He raised one fist, Kai coalescing around his knuckles. I'm not one of those beings. Wait, Palpatine began. Vegeta's punch was precisely calibrated, powerful enough to send the Emperor flying backward through his own throne, crashing into the wall hard enough to crack reinforced stone, but not lethal, not fatal, just utterly, completely defeating. The dark side manifestation collapsed instantly as Palpatine's concentration shattered. Gravity returned to normal. The oppressive presence that had dominated the throne room for decades evaporated like smoke and vacuum. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire, Supreme Sith Lord, most powerful Force user in 1,000 years, lay in the rubble of his destroyed throne, conscious but unable to rise, defeated. You had advantage, Vegeta said, standing over him. Home territory, advanced preparation, full mastery of your mystical abilities. You still lost. Not through treachery or surprising weakness. You lost because raw power, properly applied, trumps sophisticated technique. Remember that lesson. Royal guards surged forward, force pikes raised, prepared to die defending their emperor. Vegeta's ki flared warningly, and they froze, Survival instinct overriding training as they recognized that attacking would result in nothing except pointless death. "Stand down," Palpatine gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. "All of you, stand. Down." He focused on Vegeta with eyes that burned with frustrated hatred. "You've won. Made your point. Now what? Execute me? Prove your barbarism equals my calculated tyranny? I told you, I leave, after you fulfill my conditions." Vegeta extended one hand, Kai crackling around his palm in clear threat. "Release everyone imprisoned for helping me. Restore Score's business and reputation. Free the bartender from interrogation. And transmit galaxy-wide announcement that persecution of my associates ends immediately. And if I refuse, then I demonstrate that Sith Lords are significantly less durable than their reputations suggest." The threat carried absolute sincerity. Palpatine stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. Pained, bitter sound that suggested he appreciated the irony despite his defeat. "Very well. You've earned compliance through superior force. How deliciously appropriate." He gestured weakly to Vader. "Implement his demands, all of them, and transmit," he coughed, then continued with vicious satisfaction, "transmit that the Emperor was defeated in single combat by being from beyond our galaxy. Let everyone see that unlimited power has limits after all." "Master, that will encourage rebellion," Vader began. "Do it," Palpatine's eyes blazed. "He wants conditions met? I'll meet them spectacularly. Let the galaxy see their Emperor humbled. Let them witness that someone exists who cannot be controlled through fear or force. Perhaps," he smiled through bloody teeth, "perhaps the resulting chaos will prove more entertaining than stable tyranny." Vegeta studied the Emperor warily, recognizing manipulation even in defeat. Palpatine was turning his loss into weapons somehow, using honesty about vulnerability to achieve goals that standard victory couldn't. It was simultaneously impressive and deeply concerning. "You're planning something," Vegeta stated, "always, but I'm also keeping my word. Your associates will be released and compensated. The persecution ends." Palpatine struggled to sitting position against the ruined wall. "In exchange, you've given me something invaluable. Proof that the Force isn't absolute, that beings exist beyond its reach, that the galaxy's power structures require reconsideration." His expression was ancient calculation. "You've changed everything, Prince Vegeta. Whether that change serves order or chaos remains to be seen." Vegeta wanted to press the issue, to extract more binding commitments, but he recognized when enemy defeat was complete. Palpatine would honor the immediate terms because his pride demanded it, and whatever long-term schemes he was planning would take time to manifest. "Your empire is built on foundations that crumble when someone strong enough refuses to obey," Vegeta said. "I've proven that. Whether you learn from the lesson or dismiss it as anomaly determines your future." He turned and walked toward the hole he'd created in the ceiling, preparing to depart the same way he'd entered. Before he could leap skyward, Vader's voice stopped him. "Prince Vegeta." The Dark Lord deactivated his destroyed lightsaber, standing without his signature weapon for the first time in decades. "You were correct about chains and masters, about pride masquerading as pragmatism." He paused, mechanical breathing the only sound in the devastated throne room. "I don't know if I possess strength to break free as you did, but you've demonstrated that freedom is possible. That service chosen from fear isn't service at all. That's significant." "Then choose differently," Vegeta replied. "Or don't. Your chains are your responsibility, not mine. I've broken mine. You'll need to break yours yourself." He leaped through the ceiling breach and rocketed into Coruscant's sky, golden aura trailing behind him, like comet ascending rather than falling. Behind him, in the destroyed throne room, he left the galaxy's most powerful beings contemplating the wreckage of certainties they'd built their empire upon. The flight back to Adelon passed in contemplative silence. Vegeta had won, defeated the Emperor, achieved his objective, proven that power without limits could be resisted, that tyranny built on fear crumbled when someone refused to be afraid. But he felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just weary acknowledgement that he'd changed this galaxy in ways he couldn't fully predict or control. A Talon base erupted in celebration when his shuttle landed. Rebels who'd monitored the confrontation through seized Imperial feeds had witnessed everything. The battle, the Emperor's defeat, the conditions Vegeta had imposed. They cheered, embraced, celebrated the impossible victory that one being had achieved against overwhelming power. Vegeta endured their gratitude with uncomfortable stoicism, accepting congratulations he didn't feel he'd earned. He'd fought for personal reasons, protecting beings who'd helped him, proving he wouldn't be controlled. The rebellion's larger cause had been incidental to his motivation, but watching them celebrate, seeing hope reignited in beings who'd fought against impossible odds for years, he understood that his personal war had become symbol of something larger. Proof that the empire could be defied, that tyranny wasn't invincible, that sometimes one being standing on principle mattered more than armies fighting for causes. "You did it," Hera said, approaching with smile that mixed relief and respect. "Actually defeated the Emperor. Changed everything." "I delayed his plans and forced compliance with immediate demands," Vegeta corrected. "I didn't change everything. The Empire still exists. Palpatine still rules. I've just complicated his authority." "Complication is how rebellions win," Ahsoka observed, joining them. "Not through single decisive battles, but through thousand small victories that erode tyranny's foundations. You've given us the greatest small victory imaginable, proof that the Emperor himself isn't untouchable." Vegeta wanted to argue that he hadn't fought for the rebellion, that their war remained their own, that nothing had fundamentally changed in his relationship to their cause. But he'd be lying, and they'd know it. "What happens now?" Ezra asked. "The Emperor's defeated but alive. The Empire's weakened but functional. You've made powerful enemy while refusing to join the beings who could protect you." "Now I adapt to new reality I've created," Vegeta replied. "The Emperor will honor his immediate commitments. He's too proud not to, but he'll also begin planning countermeasures. Meanwhile, every Imperial officer will view me as threat to eliminate. Every bounty hunter will see unprecedented reward for my capture. Every being in the galaxy will have opinion about the alien who humbled their Emperor." "Sounds complicated," Sabine said. "It's about to become more so," Score's voice called from across the landing platform. The Twi'lek mechanic approached, freed from Imperial custody as Vegeta had demanded, her expression mixing gratitude and exasperation. "I've been released, compensated, and given Imperial charter guaranteeing my business immunity from future persecution, all because you punched the Emperor through his throne." She stopped in front of him, head tails twitching with emotion. "Thank you. Genuinely. You risked everything for beings you barely knew." "I dislike debts," Vegeta said gruffly. "You helped me. I returned the favor. We're even." "We're not even close to even," Score replied. "But I'll let you pretend otherwise if it protects your pride." She glanced at the assembled rebels. "So what's next for the legendary warrior prince?" Vegeta looked across the base, at rebels who'd shown him respect without demanding submission, at the mechanic who'd exceeded obligations out of principle, at former Jedi who'd offered wisdom without preaching, at beings who fought daily against tyranny despite knowing they might lose. "I stay," he said finally, "not permanently, not as official rebel operative, but I stay in this galaxy, continue opposing the Empire when our interests align, and," he paused, uncomfortable with the admission, "and maybe learn what your rebellion already knows. That fighting for something beyond yourself gives meaning that pure strength never achieves." The celebration intensified, rebels welcoming what they saw as recruitment, even as Vegeta insisted it was merely pragmatic cooperation. But beneath the semantics and protests, something fundamental had shifted. The Prince of all Saiyans had found beings worth protecting in galaxy far from home, had discovered that conscience strengthened rather than weakened warriors' purpose, had learned that breaking his own chains was first step, but helping others break theirs gave those chains destruction meaning. And somewhere in the wreckage of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Palpatine smiled through his pain. The Saiyan had defeated him, yes, but in doing so had become symbol that would inspire resistance across the galaxy. Resistance that would justify increased Imperial countermeasures, more aggressive enforcement, escalation that would ultimately strengthen rather than weaken his authority. The prince had played right into strategies he couldn't comprehend. And by the time he recognized the manipulation, it would be too late. or so the Emperor believed. But Palpatine had made the same mistake Frieza had, assuming that Vegeta's pride would prevent him from adapting, learning, growing beyond his original limitations. Time would reveal which assessment was correct. The galaxy had been irrevocably changed. What came next would determine whether that change led to freedom or just more sophisticated tyranny. But for one moment, on a hidden rebel base far from Imperial oversight, beings celebrated the impossible victory and allowed themselves to believe that hope mattered more than power. And the Prince of all Saiyans, who'd spent his life believing only strength mattered, discovered he didn't entirely disagree. Word count, 4,039. Conclusion. The galaxy spoke of him in whispers and legends. The warrior from beyond the stars. The being who'd stood before the Emperor and walked away unbowed. Some called him hero, others threat. The Empire classified him as existential danger. The rebellion viewed him as symbol of what resistance could achieve. Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, refused all labels except the one he'd chosen himself, free. In the weeks following his confrontation with Palpatine, the galaxy transformed. The Emperor kept his word with bitter precision, releasing prisoners and ending persecution. But as predicted, Imperial forces mobilized for longer campaign, not direct confrontation but strategic containment. Subtle pressures designed to isolate and eventually eliminate the threat through attrition rather than open warfare. The rebellion adapted, using Vegeta's example to inspire recruitment and operational expansion. Beings across the galaxy who'd considered resistance pointless now questioned that assumption. If one warrior could humble the Emperor, perhaps organized opposition could achieve more. And Vegeta himself continued evolving. Training with Ahsoka taught him to sense the Force even if he couldn't manipulate it. Score's technical expertise upgraded his equipment beyond standard capabilities. Rebel intelligence networks provided information that made his independent operations devastatingly effective. He never officially joined the Alliance, never swore loyalty to their cause or accepted their command structure. But when Imperial tyranny crossed paths with his principles, he responded with Saiyan fury that reminded everyone why even emperors should fear beings who refuse to kneel. Somewhere in the vast universe beyond dimensional barriers, his original reality continued without him. Bulma probably assumed he'd died in the training accident. Goku likely sensed his absence, but couldn't locate him across infinite space. His son Trunks would need to defend Earth without his father's power. The thought should have filled him with desperate urgency to return. Instead, Vegeta found himself surprisingly content in this strange galaxy that had challenged everything he believed about power, purpose, and pride. He'd conquered his own limitations, discovered that strength without conscience was hollow victory, learned that fighting for others didn't diminish warriors' honor, but elevated it. And perhaps most importantly, he'd proven that even across universes, even in galaxies governed by mystical forces beyond his understanding, one fundamental truth remained constant. The Prince of all Saiyans bowed to no one, not to tyrants, not to fear, not even to fate itself. In a cantina on Nar Shaddaa, the basilisk bartender served drinks to patrons who'd survived Imperial interrogation, released as Vegeta had demanded. They toasted the strange warrior who'd saved them, wondering where he'd gone and whether they'd see him again. On Coruscant, in a newly reconstructed throne room, Emperor Palpatine plotted revenge and recruitment in equal measure, recognizing that beings of Vegeta's caliber became either greatest assets or most dangerous enemies, depending on approach. In deep space aboard the Executor, Darth Vader meditated on chains, masters, and the uncomfortable realization that service chosen from fear was slavery by another name. His breathing mask hissed rhythmically as he contemplated choices he'd convinced himself were inevitable, wondering if freedom was still possible after 2 decades of willing servitude. And on a Talon, in a base that would soon relocate to avoid Imperial detection, rebels planned operations knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, a warrior prince who claimed no allegiance would appear when tyranny grew too bold, when the strong preyed too openly on the weak, when someone needed to demonstrate that power alone didn't grant the right to rule. The Force had shaped this galaxy for millennia. Now something from beyond the Force had arrived and proven that the universe was larger, stranger, and more wonderful than even mystical energy fields could encompass. Vegeta stood on a cliff overlooking Atalon's crimson desert, watching twin suns set while contemplating the future. He was stranded, possibly permanently. But he'd been stranded before, under Frieza's control, forced to serve against his will, dreaming of freedom he believed impossible. He'd broken those chains through strength and stubbornness. These circumstances were different but not fundamentally dissimilar. And if there was one thing Saiyans understood better than anyone, it was that limitations existed only until someone strong enough refused to accept them. "Hey," Ezra called from behind him. "We're planning the next operation. Hera wants your input. Says your perspective on Imperial tactics is valuable." "I'll be there momentarily," Vegeta replied without turning. The Force-sensitive boy hesitated. "Are you okay? You seem contemplative." "I'm acknowledging that circumstances rarely align with preferences, but adaptation remains possible regardless." Vegeta finally turned, fixing the young rebel with serious expression. "Also recognizing that this galaxy, primitive as it is, contains beings worth fighting beside, present company marginally included." Ezra grinned. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to anyone here. Enjoy it. I don't intend repetition." They walked back toward the base together, Saiyan Prince and Rebel Padawan, beings from different philosophies united by recognition that some battles mattered more than pride, some causes transcended self-interest, some stands against tyranny were worth taking regardless of cost. The galaxy had been irrevocably changed. The Force would never be the same, and the legend of Vegeta, the warrior from beyond the stars, would endure long after memory of specific battles faded. Because some truths echoed across universes: power without purpose is meaningless. Strength without conscience is hollow. And sometimes the greatest victory is choosing to stand on principle, even when kneeling would be easier. The Prince of all Saiyans had learned those lessons in blood, struggle, and eventual triumph. And this galaxy, for better or worse, would learn them too.